There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock. Hello, folks, and happy New Year's Eve if you're watching this on New Year's Eve. If you're a patron, you're watching it on New Year's Eve, probably.
Yeah. I don't know what we're really going to be doing on New Year's Eve.
Probably nothing.
Probably nothing. We spent a lot of money this Christmas.
We really did, I know.
Yeah. I got an extension on the damn credit card. I burned it the fuck up.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, it's kind of sucks, but it's like, well, it's... I don't know. It's kind of like, I kind of like going out New Year's Eve because I like going out, you know, for like a holiday and everything like that. But then in a way, too, it seems like, I don't know, it's kind of amateur night.
Yeah.
It's kind of like going out on St. Patrick's Day
Yeah.
when everybody that doesn't usually...
It's like,
it's not all the seasoned drinkers like ourselves.
It's just like riding to Bike Week in Daytona on Bike Week when you live here. You're like, man, fuck it. Where do those people come from?
Yeah.
Because normally, you know, if you ride like we do around here, you're the center of attention. You live here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't need all these foreign bikers and fucking...
Foreign bikers.
They're
from
like
Georgia.
foreign from other parts of the
other
state
states.
and other states coming over here, cramping our style with their motorcycles. You know what I mean?
Daytona was way worse because it's like, although like I said, I didn't really mind Bike Week and Bike Timberfest as much as I minded Spring Break because I used to live over on the beach side and
it's bad too.
That was horrible. It was like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of like drunken frat boys and sorority girls barfing in the yard and whatnot. So, you know, that was fun.
So today's show is going to be about Lizzie Borden.
Lizzie Borden. It's like somebody
this is a classic case.
Requested this a while back and I was like, oh yeah,
Never
shit, man. That was like a really good idea. And I don't even think this was on my list, even though this is one of my favorite cases.
You would think that we had done this case already.
I know, that's what I mean. And it just seemed like a drastic oversight. So we're finally getting around to doing it.
It's kind of a pedestrian case. I mean, you think that everybody knows this case. I mean, I've
maybe
seen
not.
So much
I mean,
shit
if not,
about
if you're
this case.
yes, it's like probably the most famous case or one of the most famous cases from the U.S. at least in the 19th century. But, you know, maybe people that live in other countries don't know that much about it.
Or they just want to hear our take on it.
Or they just want to hear our take on it or something like that. I mean, I found this really interesting. I read like a whole book on it. I've read like I've seen like a whole bunch of documentaries and shit like that. I will say, you know, this is technically considered an unsolved case because I don't know if people are aware, but Lizzie Borden was actually acquitted of the murders of her father and stepmother. But, I don't know. It seems like opinions kind of divided whether she really did it or whether it was somebody else. I kind of tend toward her doing it, although there are some kind of details of the case that kind of give me pause. But if you put a gun to my head and said, who do you think did it? I think she probably did it.
I think she did too.
But
we'll get
you know,
down to that.
they've made like a whole bunch of movies about it and everything like that. I think they had there was one with Christina Ricci. There was one, I think it was back in the 70s or 80s with Elizabeth Montgomery, your favorite.
Yeah.
I think she played Lizzie Borden. I think it might have been a TV movie.
Yeah.
I think it's on YouTube for free. I need to watch that shit. I think I saw it a long time ago, but I don't remember much about it.
Before I forget, I'm working on the shirts right now.
Yeah,
Cut
for
a
the
screen.
$20 and up patrons.
Yeah, cut a screen, got the fabric mounted, got the emulsion on there. It's still drying. I went and checked it. It's got a couple little wet spots.
Still kind
on
of
it
tacky,
still.
yeah.
Yeah, but we might be able to actually make the image tonight after this show.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, yeah.
Because it's nighttime. I want to do it when it's dark.
Yeah,
Easy.
it's like I have the transparency made
Right.
for the thing. We just haven't exposed it yet.
If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's going to be a black shirt, kind of like the one I have now, black and white. And it's going to say 13 o'clock podcast on it, but it's done in the font and the style of Friday the 13th part 1.
Of the Friday the 13th
when that big
poster.
13 comes busting through the glass. Jen did a good job on it, so
Thank you.
it's going to be like that.
Kind of like my take on it.
It's a mashup shirt. And from here on out, I think our show shirts really... I should make some cool mashup shirts.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
It's like I was thinking about maybe doing a Shining one.
Yeah.
I was thinking about doing, I don't know.
Yeah, Shining, Alien, fucking, Predator.
Ooh, that would be rad. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind doing a Predator one. Or
that would be cool.
Or a Terminator one.
That would also be cool.
Yeah, with a punk rock Arnold with his fucking 2 weapons fucking shooting up the damn police station.
I mean, like I said, use it for copyright issues. You can't
Yeah, but I have to combine the two. It has to mash up.
Yeah. I mean, if we're just making them for patrons to send out,
I don't think it's a problem.
Then we can do whatever we want
Right.
to. It's just ones that we're going to put up for sale that you can't use properties like that. Because, I mean, the one that I did this time, that's Friday the 13th, basically all I used from that was, like, the font and, like, the style of the poster. With, like, the kind of 3D letters.
Some people, on prior shows have asked us, I want that shirt, how much? We'll get back to you in a bit. We're going to do the mail out first, and once the mail out's done, then we're worried about customers, that people that want to buy the shirt.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be a $20 shirt, and you have to pay the shipping. If you live in another country, we might be able to work something out, because I don't think it's reasonable for you paying. What the hell? Damn moth in here. Killed him. That was some Miyagi shit there. I hit him.
He's just a Mr. I can't believe you killed the poor little moth.
Moth, got him.
Aw.
That's because I opened the door looking for the cat. But what I was going to say is I don't really think it's reasonable charging you $50 for a damn shirt.
Well, no, that's obviously not reasonable.
Maybe we can work something out if you live overseas, and maybe I can give you a little bit of a price break on it.
Yeah, because the shipping is not. Yeah, the shipping is expensive, but it's not that expensive. It's, I've mailed some stuff overseas, like to Ireland, Australia, and stuff like that, and it actually wasn't as expensive as I was expecting.
With U.S. shipping, you can probably add about another $7-8 on it, probably.
I don't even know if it would be that much, because it's you still have to ship it as a package. I think when I shipped them as packages before, I think the postage ended up being between like $5 and $6.
Okay, so looking at $25 for the shirt.
Yeah.
And it'll be to whatever size you want, handcrafted by me using photo screen.
Yeah.
I'm doing my own photo screen. So and they come out good. The quality's really good. I use the best quality materials. Once that image is on there, it stays. So, and if you want to darken that shirt back up, they're going to have a lot of cotton. It's mostly cotton.
Yeah.
There'll be a blend, but real heavy in the cotton. So that means if it starts to fade, you can hit it with RIT. That you can get RIT dye.
Yeah.
You get the supermarket and keep it black, and it won't affect the image.
Also, I'd like to give another thank you to Mary for recommending jiffyshirts.com.
Yeah, that's what we used.
That's what we used this time, and it's like, they not only are the prices really reasonable, but they sent it like immediately. I got it like it was like a day and a half after I ordered the shit. I was like amazed.
Shout out to Jiffy Shirts.
And during the Christmas season, so that was pretty awesome.
That's why I'm not worried about getting everybody's order right now. If you want one after we've done the mail out, I'll hit you guys back up again. We'll make up a list and we'll order some more.
Yeah. Because that's we're just going to start ordering them in batches.
Right.
All right.
Another thing I wanted to say, if you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon. We could use some more patrons. Of course, we have a real hardcore following of patrons. A lot of them pay us a lot of money. But we have a big show now, so if we have enough people that listening that every dollar would now help. So if you guys want to, if you want the show to continue, please contribute $1 or so to Patreon. That'd really help us out.
Yeah.
And it'll guarantee that the show keeps on moving.
We are almost to 8,000 subscribers.
We're almost to 8,000 subscribers.
And I don't know how many people listen on iTunes or other podcasts.
We have no idea what's going on in the podcast. If you're on the podcast...
I just put the shit up and let people download it.
If you're on the podcast, please contribute if you can. Also, $1 a month on Patreon would help now. And,
Yeah, for sure.
That's all I got to say about it.
I mean, speaking of Patreon, I would also like to give a shout out to Holly for increasing her Patreon support. She was a supporter before, but has increased her support. So thank you very much, Holly. Mm-hmm. Have a couple of other shout outs. I would like to thank our fan, Out of Time Pictures, for sending us a movie called Looker, which I don't think I had ever seen. Now, you think you had seen it. It was like it was written by Michael Crichton.
We're going to do a review on it. And
it'll probably be a couple of weeks because I think we're going to do another.
I had this one confused with the Tom Selleck movie, Runaway.
And that was also written by Michael Crichton.
Right, because I remember that they were trying to shoot each other with a damn gun that would mesmerize you using light. And, you know, Michael Crichton, he wrote some fucking trip shit, and I liked his other movies. Like Demon Seed, I really liked that one.
Yeah, he did Westworld.
Westworld. I think he did Andromeda Strain, too, didn't he?
He might have. I might have to check. But obviously he wrote Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was either Andromeda Strain or Coma. What was it?
Probably did that one.
Was it one of those?
I'd like to see anything more from this guy. If you guys want to hear more Michael Crichton style reviews, send the shit to us. I'll review it.
Yeah, because I don't think I had ever seen this movie, and I found it very intriguing.
The movie was kind of ahead of its time in its own way.
It was kind of.
We'll do a review on it.
Yeah, it's like it'd probably be a couple weeks, like I said, because I have one. Oh, you
did.
You
look,
didn't
I got
get
him again.
You didn't get him.
He got up off the floor.
Oh.
I caught him though.
He resurrected. Put him outside.
I have a show to do.
Oh, don't. Oh.
Yeah.
You suck.
Yeah.
I can't believe you killed that little guy.
I just stepped on him a little bit.
You stepped on him a little bit.
Yeah, I just stepped on him a little bit.
Oh, you're terrible.
I don't have time to, cuddle these moths and shit. You're not talking about Mothra. That was just a little
How
moth.
do you know?
I hit those things on my motorcycle all the time, just kill them and just vaporize. Just by accident. So if he was a big old Sphinx moth, maybe I'd have taken him out.
But he's small, so you can just kill him.
Yeah.
So fuck that guy.
Yeah, it's a robot moth.
Okay.
It's just a robot.
So yeah, and also I meant to mention this on our matinee show on Sunday because I was actually wearing the shirt on that show, but I would like to give another shout out to Sophie. And like I said, she sent me that like really awesome book that Ian Brady, the Moore's Murderer, wrote, and I'm a little more than halfway through that book, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
But she also sent me, and I think it was hers, also sent me a really cool T-shirt, which, like I said, I'm wearing it in the matinee show from Sunday.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, she sent me a bottle of some badass tequila called 1414. This is some handcrafted.
Such a pretty bottle. I love the bottle.
Handcrafted designer shit here, man. It's like a $60, $70 bottle.
Sophie's so awesome.
Tequila,
she always sends us like really cool.
And I was drinking it, and it kind of had this something, this back taste. I could taste the cinnamon and vanilla. That's real common in tequila, but there was like this back note. It was kind of heat. You know what I mean? So what is that? It was good,
Yeah, you're becoming a real connoisseur.
Yeah. And it was habanero and white pepper.
That sounds right up your alley.
Yeah. I tried some of it on the rocks. It was good. Then I put a splash of damn citrus in it, orange juice, and it got even better. But that one's too high quality to do with what I normally do, like mix it with gridlock and shit. That's my cheap. That's my cheap.
That's your cheap shit you bought at Aldi.
Tequila.
You don't want to waste the good tequila.
Yeah, don't want to waste
the Aldi stuff.
On the Aldi stuff, you know what I mean?
I get it.
Yeah, I haven't tried 1414 with that guava juice, guava nectar. It might work with it.
Probably,
it
I
might
would
work
imagine.
With it. It might work.
I don't see why not.
Yeah, you can't water it. You can't water it down. You got to leave it strong. It likes to be mixed strong. 1414.
It likes that.
It likes strength. It likes strength. Yeah.
I gotcha.
Jenny's spotlighting my idiosyncrasies, my oddities.
Well, I think they're pretty obvious to everyone. It's
I
don't think I really need to point them out.
they're laughing at me.
Well, no one's laughing at you.
They're laughing at me. Oh, they say all kinds of fucking funny shit.
We're laughing
at me
with
online.
you.
They say all kinds of funny
shit. We're laughing
shit.
with you.
It's all good.
Also, yeah, see, there you go.
It's all good.
Also,
this is entertainment.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Woo. Look at Dennis's little head going back and forth.
Yeah.
Also, as I said, since if you're seeing the show, it's New Year's Eve, so since the new year is coming, I also started doing, as I said, like about an hour-long show of just me reading scary stories. Most of them are like older stories that are like public domain. Some of them are my own stories that I wrote. And some of them are like kind of Reddit stories that I thought. Not a lot of them are from that because there's a subreddit on there where people are like, they post stories that they say, oh, it's okay to read these, like for your YouTube channel or whatever, but most of them really aren't very good. Mm-hmm. So they're like either poorly written or they're just kind of like, and okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of them aren't that. So a lot of them are kind of like classic, like scary stories or my own stories. Or
you're gonna put them on this channel, right?
I am. It's gonna have its own playlist.
That's what I would do.
The playlist is gonna be called The Witching Hour. Like I said, I have 7 episodes finished.
Right.
So I'll probably just put one up a week or one every 2 weeks or something like that. I haven't really decided. I'll probably put them up on like Wednesday or Thursday or something like that.
This is my idea.
Okay.
Get like 10 of them recorded. Okay. And I drop them all around the same time. That way they're because if you only drop one up there, it won't attract a lot of attention online for that genre.
Yeah.
But if you dropped them all, then you'd be taken more seriously because there's a lot of them there. They
well,
just list
maybe.
them all.
Well, I could maybe do like a month's worth at a time, like 4 of them, and then because I wanted to get like kind of ahead because I try to record 1 a week.
Right.
These are easier to do than the shows because I can just like go in my little soundproof
I'd immediately
and
drop
do them.
4 of them to make an impression.
Yeah, that's
and then like another one every
and then
week.
I can schedule it because YouTube.
somewhere.
One of the new things I think YouTube, and I think this is a fairly new thing, but you can schedule, like you can upload them and then schedule when you want them to go
That's
public.
what I would do.
Which is nice because it took them a long time to get around to doing
I'd drop 3 or 4 of them instantly.
Yeah.
And then start dropping them once a week.
Yeah, I guess I could do that.
That's what I would do. Because if there's just one there, I don't think it'll attract a lot of attention. But if there's 4 of them, people that are into that will sit there and listen to all 4.
And listen to all 4 of them, which
Yep.
would be 4 hours of scary stories.
Yeah, they'll also probably, maybe share the shit so you'll get subscribers.
Yeah, that would be cool.
If you drop 1 of them, it might not make big enough splash to be noticed.
That's true.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so let's start talking about the Lizzie Borden case. As I said, easily one of American crime history's most famous cases, particularly 19th century cases. I can't really think of another 19th century case that's as famous as this one. Like I said, they've made like a ton of movies about it.
It was a media sensation in its day.
It was, and a lot of people have compared it to
like the OJ case.
To the OJ case back in the 30s, because the book that I read was actually written by a guy that the book came out in 1937.
Kind of like when they kidnapped that kid, too.
Yeah, I was going to say the Lindbergh the Bruno Hauptmann, the Bruno Hauptmann case, that was like, so it was kind of like this big, huge thing. And it was another thing where like newspapers were like competing to, print all this stuff. The interesting thing about this though, is that it seems that a lot of the media at the time were kind of on Lizzie's side. Like they kind of thought that she was innocent, that like the police were, bumbling and inept and that they were persecuting her. Because at the time, I mean, she was kind of from a wealthy family. She was a Sunday school teacher. She was, I'll kind of get into like, she wasn't like up in society or anything like that, even though they had a lot of money. But she was seen as just this kind of like unimpeachable, like spinster type character. And I think there was a perception at the time that women could not do anything of this brutality.
Yeah. Although I think the cops knew better.
Yeah, it's
there were murders down in the ghetto back in the day. I've seen photographs, crime scene photographs, stuff that was done by women, white women.
Yeah.
And they were killing each other with hatchets and guns and shit that goes back fucking thousands of
years.
Yeah,
I mean, it is much, much rarer. I will admit that it is much, much rarer for a woman to kill somebody, like, say, with a hatchet. Yeah. Usually there were a lot of women murderers, but they tended to use less ostentatious methods, let's say. They tended to use poison or sometimes firearms.
Just off the top of my head, a woman taking a hatchet to a guy or where it's almost always a case of some kind of abuse.
Yeah.
And she just can't take it anymore. Or she just gets scared or whatever, and then she clubs the dude to death. Or she waits for that sucker to go to sleep, and then she beats him to death. I mean, that's happened a lot.
Well, yeah.
Because she can't face the attacker, you know what I mean? He's
then
a drunk, and he's super abusive and dangerous.
Yeah, and maybe he's bigger than her or something like that.
So they just can't take it, you know what I mean? So then she just loses it, So that's usually what happens. That's the pattern.
Although
especially back in those times,
I do kind of think that there might have been something else going on in Lizzie Borden's case. So because she was kind of an unusual woman. I'm not saying that she did it. I don't know if she did it or not. I would tend to think that she probably did, just because there really doesn't seem to be any other compelling suspect. But like I said, and the way she acted, like after the murders, seemed a little sketchy. And a lot of her stories kind of didn't add up and stuff, but I don't know. There's like some details in there that kind of like give me pause. And like I said, she was acquitted at the time. And later on, I think that, I don't know if they do this every year, but like some law schools, like to kind of train lawyers and stuff, will do this as a mock trial. And usually when they redo it as a mock trial, she is acquitted again, simply because all the evidence against her was circumstantial. You know what I mean? So even if she were tried today in a court of law, I mean, obviously, today there would have been a lot more forensic evidence than there was back at the time. But given the evidence that was collected from the crime scene, she probably would have been acquitted today as well, just because there wasn't enough to convict her on.
You have to prove guilt.
That's what I mean. And there was still enough doubt that someone else could have done it.
Now, if you'd have got her in front of a fucking volatile or stupid or volatile and stupid jury, you probably could have got a conviction. But usually they probably, they took the jury pool from peers, so it was people around her area that were already sympathetic to her. So,
yeah, she did really seem to be played. And in a way, if she did do it, she was kind of a criminal genius because she knew that would be that could be used in her favor.
Right.
You know what I mean? So let's get into this a little bit. So I'm going to talk about like the background of the Borden family. Now, Andrew Jackson Borden, who was Lizzie's father, he was actually like a kind of a big deal. This all happened in Fall River, Massachusetts. The murders happened in 1892, in case you wanted to know. Now, at the time, Fall River was a fairly prosperous town. It was mostly like textiles. It was also a seaport. Now, the Borden family, and this might still be nowadays in New England, I'm not really sure, but the Borden family that lived there, they were actually all descended from Richard and Joan Borden, who were English colonists who had arrived in Rhode Island in 1638. So they were very deep, and then they had kind of spread out like all over New England. So there's still like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of like Borden families, like from this initial couple. Now, Andrew Borden was one of the most prominent citizens of Fall River. Pretty much everybody knew who he was. Now, at the time of his murder, he was 70 years old. He was actually one of the richest men in the city. He was president of the Union Savings Bank. He was also director of the First National Bank. He was the director of the BMC Durfee Safe Deposit and Trust Company, director of the councils of the Troy Cotton and Woolen Manufacturing Company, the Globe Yarn Mills, and the Merchants Manufacturing Company, and he was a commercial landlord that had several buildings that he rented out to other tenants. Now, according to most accounts of him, he was kind of admired around town for his thrift and his business industriousness. However, he doesn't seem to have been particularly likable. People thought that he was kind of a stick in the mud. He was a very tall man. He was very thin. He was kind of like, wasn't a fun guy. He was very dour, didn't have much of a sense of humor. So he was like unpleasant to hang around, apparently, even though he was admired from afar for his like business acumen. Because you have to and the reason that he might have been so thrifty, I'll get into this a little bit later, but was because, unlike many of his extended relatives, like in the Borden clan, most of them had like inherited their money because this was a wealthy, prominent family. He had actually worked for his. His parents had not been super wealthy. He had actually kind of come up in his own business, making furniture and coffins. He actually had a coffin manufacturing business, and that was very successful. So he actually kind of built his fortune, maybe not from the very ground up, but, from pretty modest background.
Most guys don't.
Yeah, and
most people are not 100% self-made.
Yeah, well, you can't be. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like
you always have something to start with.
You always have to have something. Yeah. So whether it's your family or whether it's like, something else.
Reputation of your family.
Yeah.
Friends of your family.
Yeah. You always got to have something to start with.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like his parents and stuff, they were pretty modest means. So he actually did build most of his wealth, from his own like business acumen. He didn't have a lot of inherited money. Now,
not what you know, it's who you know.
Well, that's true back then, and it's true. It's pretty. That is very true. It's sad because I feel like that's why I had a hard time like getting jobs and stuff like that back in the day, because it's like if you don't know like a lot of people and you're not like
it's harder.
It is much harder. You can still do it. I mean, I still did it, but
it's a lot more luck involved.
Oh
the people that are really set making money, it's generational and friends and popularity and then if you look at the person who's making all the money, they don't really have the so-called credentials to get to make that kind of money.
Like I said, they just knew someone important, or they,
Yeah, if you want to make a lot of money, if you want to make a lot of money, universities don't have anything to do with it. Nothing to do with it.
You got to work into the right circle.
Most of the people that are making the big money right now are running jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago. You couldn't go to a university to learn how to be a damn YouTuber. Like shit, we have a hard time making $500 a month on YouTube. I was just looking. They got 12-year-old kids making $100,000 a year on YouTube.
Isn't that crazy?
12-year-old kid. I make $150,000 on YouTube. That's it. With stupid
12-year-old kid.
Yeah,
what the fuck is that kid gonna do with $150,000?
And all he's doing is cussing at video games. Because all of his subscribers are 12, and
they're all also cussing at video games.
They're all cussing at the video games. They're going to send him fucking
And they're going to send mommy and daddy's money.
Mommy and daddy's $1 a month, and then he's got fucking 5 million subs.
Maybe we should start cussing at video
games.
Cussing
the damn video game. You can only make that kind of money cussing at video game if you're fucking 12.
Yeah, it doesn't really work.
It doesn't work for an adult.
Shit, man. But I have to say, like, back in the fucking 80s and 90s, if YouTube had existed back then, my brother would have made like $1 million because that's all he did was cuss at video games. And we're talking about like the old Nintendo, like Legend of Zelda, and fucking what's the one with Samus and the Mother Brain and all that? Yeah, Metroid.
There's no.
He cussed at that all day, throwing the fucking controller and everything.
I've been sitting here studying it, and I study it. There really is no educational system in existence today that can prepare you for what's going to make money tomorrow.
Yeah, it's hard to predict, honestly.
You can't predict it.
You can't really predict it. And you can't predict... That's why I just kind of like... we talk about this all the time. It's like when we're just doing the show, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to do shit that I'm interested in. If other people are interested, that's cool. If they're not interested, I don't really care. It's like I don't really want to spend my whole entire life like chasing after what I think other people are going to be interested in. Because even if they are interested in something for a short time and like say we get like, 200,000 subs or something because we did something that seemed to like... hit some kind of zeitgeist or whatever. But it's like, how long is that going to last?
Yeah, it's always high turnover.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of like here today, gone tomorrow. And it's like, I would rather just have like an interesting show that kind of built a fan base like slowly and more organically.
I mean, they got guys that are making a shit ton of money yelling at Star Wars.
That's what I mean.
But their turnover for subscribers is very fat,
because like I said,
they're making a lot of money though.
And the thing about it, too, though, is that, their audience might be very young and it might be aging out. Because it's like, I'm old. I know that. I'm like, I'm 47, but it's like...
You got to do it the old way.
So it's not... Well, I mean, that's not my audience. So it's like, I can see how even if you were younger, after a few years, you would kind of get sick of... It's like, man, I'm sick of like some dude just yelling about shit or like outraged about shit. It's like, it gets boring. And, so I can see how that would happen.
Well, that eventually became PewDiePie. And that dude still, I think he makes about $1 million a month. And he's not really yelling at video games anymore. He does do that, but then he just makes fun of videos that he sees, and he's a personality. But that's what celebrity was back in the television age and the movie age anyway. It's just...
That's what I mean. It's like, I don't think, like, I don't want to be one of those, like, old man yells at cloud where it's just kind of like, oh, these kids today with their YouTube show. It's not really any different.
No, that's what celebrity was back in the day.
Let's go back, like, really was when I was a little kid and shit like, like Hollywood Squares or shit like that.
Yeehaw.
Most of those... Yeehaw?
Yeehaw, that's right, yeah.
My grandma loved
that shit was annoying.
Well, it really was, yeah. But it's like a lot of those celebrities, some of them were actors and stuff like that, but some of them I was kind of unclear on what they were famous for. They were just famous for being famous and famous for being on Hollywood Squares.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, they were famous. I think they were famous to celebrities because they hung out at the same clubs and the same bars.
Yeah, and they were just like you said, they were a personality.
Yeah, and celebrities, they got drunk with celebrities, and celebrities said, "You're going to go on Hollywood Squares."
Yeah, come on, we're going to be on Hollywood Squares tomorrow, all hungover.
Yeah, that's I think a lot of it was that.
So I don't think
it real goes back to not what you know, but who you know.
I don't really think the YouTube thing. Like I said, I don't want to be one of those old people that's just like decrying the youth of today, right? Because that's been going on for like thousands of years. It's like everyone decrying the generation before for being like stupid or more shallow or whatever.
The only difference is that it doesn't cost thousands of dollars for a camera in a studio.
Yeah, that's the only difference.
And you don't need television channels.
Yeah. That's the only difference. It's like I really don't see a lot of difference aside from that. Just it being like cheaper to produce, which is like I said, it's kind of like the same thing that happened like in the punk rock era where recording your own records became cheaper and you could do it yourself and put out your own flyers and do your own shows and stuff like that, which prior to that you needed a record company and they needed to pay and blah blah blah. But during the punk rock era, people started doing things themselves and stuff like that. So it's not really all that different.
Yeah, and just as cable dies, YouTube takes the place of television.
Yeah, like I said, at this point, there's not really much distinction.
No, this is now television, and we're kind of like public access channel. And everyone is kind of like a public access channel in a certain way. And then...
our rickety-ass
show. Right. And now it's getting all homogenized, and, censorship's involved. The underground is now BitChute. So all of our shit is just backed up on BitChute, too, in case they one day eliminate us. Because eventually YouTube's going to become Netflix. It's going to be something like that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was like, put our shit in BitChute. It's like there's always going to be something like this. I don't think... I mean, I think this cat
they can't get rid of it.
The cat is out of the bag. I don't think you can put it back in there. Mm-mm. So that's why I don't worry about it, because I'm just like, well, whatever happens, if I have to move to some other platform, I'll move to some other platform. It's not really that big of a deal for me.
Yeah, and that platform would be BitChute. It's the second biggest. It's the one that's growing the fastest.
Yeah, so like I said, I've been uploading shit to there for like a long time. Although I have to say that it's like I very hardly ever get comments on BitChute. Hardly ever.
What BitChute is doing right now, it's backing up everything that's in danger of getting kicked off of YouTube.
So not a lot of people are actually watching.
Not a lot of people are actually watching it. What it is, it's kind of like the archive.
Yeah.
So when this finally vanishes, everybody will just move over there. Well, the only thing that I don't like about BitChute is that the comment section is unwieldy to use.
Yeah, a lot of things about it are unwieldy.
But that's the way YouTube was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe.
Now, I should say, too, that, like, I upload the audio version of the show to archive.org, the Wayback Machine, all of that. So all of our old shows are there. And, when I upload the audio, it goes to iTunes, it goes to Podbean, it goes to, like, all the other things. But it is backed up on that.
Yeah, boy, we got sidetracked.
We did, yeah.
But they love it when we go on these fucking
I know. I don't know how this happens.
Well, we're kind of like professional friends. You know what I mean? They're whatever I start fucking cutting up or we go on site, we get sidetracked. They fucking love that shit.
Yeah.
Then that's what they comment on. Every time there's a comment, it's something that happened on the side.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking...
podcasting, man.
Yeah.
We're
drinking and rambling is what we're doing.
Rambling.
But
this is how
podcasting sounds better.
Yeah.
So we were talking about Andrew Borden, how, like I said, he was known around town. He's very, very wealthy, but, not the most likable dude. Maybe a little bit of a kind of bummer guy to hang around. Now, Lizzie and Emma, their upbringing was fairly religious. They went to the Central Congregational Church. Now, Lizzie seemed like she was really into, like, church activities. She taught Sunday school, including a class, I think there was a class for, like, children of recent immigrants to the U.S., so she was, like, teaching them Sunday school. She was also in a bunch of Christian organizations, the Christian Endeavor Society. I'm not entirely sure what that is. She was the secretary-treasurer of that. She was also in the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And I found this very weird. She was also a member of the Ladies' Fruit and Flower Mission, which just kind of, like, what even is that? What is that?
Well, there was no internet then. There wasn't even really anything to
like,
do.
They
didn't have nightclubs, so you had to do something.
And the thing about it, too, and I kind of, a lot of documentaries kind of went into this. Lizzie Borden, she was, I hate to use the word spinster but that's what they called it at the time. She was unmarried. Her sister Emma, who was 10 years older, was also never married. So the tradition was, if you weren't married, you pretty much just lived in your parents' house forever.
Yeah.
You didn't move out on your own. That would have been very scandalous.
If
like for a single woman to live on her own, that just wasn't done.
If a woman wasn't married by 19, she wasn't going to get married.
That's what I mean. So it's like she was kind of, even though nowadays, like, when the murders happened, Lizzie Borden was like 32 years old.
Yeah, she's an old lady by those days.
That's what I mean. It's like nowadays that's young, but it's like back then she would have been like, an old hag at that stage because she hadn't married.
And a lot of them looked like old hags.
They did
There was something about the environment back then. I don't know, maybe just the photography. They didn't have really lifelike photographs.
Well, you had to sit there for a really long time. Yeah. That was one thing without moving.
The hair, the makeup, the lack of physical fitness, the bad diet.
Bad food.
Not real, spotty hygiene. They kind of looked bad. All of them.
They did cut. Yeah, no one was a real fashion plate back then, I gotta say. Lizzie was actually not a bad looking woman, I don't think. I mean, she got kind of hefty later on. But she was a perfectly reasonable looking woman. Yeah. But it's like, she didn't really seem to be all that interested in marriage, or in men in general. But, they're saying that it's like, so her and Emma both lived in their parents' house, and which would have been kind of an accepted thing at the time. Cause like I said, women did not live, like a single woman living on her own would have been just like really scandalous. But there weren't like a lot of social outlets because, they weren't really up in high society for reasons which I'll get to in a minute. So it seemed like her only social outlet was the church. So she was always doing church shit because I guess that was like the only time she got out of the house and got to like interact with other people.
That was the medium that they had to work within.
That's what I'm saying. It's like there wasn't anything else for her to do.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that when I was
You couldn't have a job.
It was still kind of like that when I was a little kid, you know what I mean? Going to Mississippi and in the Deep South, the older people that were around were still like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'd hate to say, losers, but by today's standards...
Well, today's standards,
you're a fucking loser. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it just
seems... They didn't do anything.
Well, it's very constrictive, and it just seems to me that it's like, if you were a woman specifically, it's like, what the fuck could you do? You couldn't do anything.
They were trying to be proper.
Yeah.
They were trying to fulfill certain standards of morality that were kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Because they were afraid of what people would think of them.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't realize that people weren't thinking anything about them.
Well, they were, though. That was kind of the problem. It's like because everybody had those, those kind of restrictive thoughts.
Well, so it's like... Yeah, but I'm talking about, I knew people that were like that in Mississippi in the 70s and 80s as a little kid. People didn't care about
that shit's long gone.
That shit was kind of long. They were still kind of holding on to that.
Even as late as that,
yeah.
When that had been fucking gone since the 60s, probably.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
If not before that.
But, in that place, there were still dry counties. There probably still might be dry counties.
I think there are.
That's ridiculous when you think about it.
That just it kills me that, like, from county to county, like, you can't buy booze
at a county because of some church woman
like thought. A long time ago.
Yeah, and it's what some church woman thought a long time ago.
Like, that woman's been dead 100 years.
Forever. Yeah.
And we're still doing that. You have to drive to the next county to get booze. That's really stupid. And I'm not really sure about this state or county. I thought, at least as far as I remember from a few years ago, you can buy booze here, obviously, because we buy a lot of it. But I think at certain places, you can't purchase it after a certain time, like at night. You know what I mean?
Ridiculous.
I'm not sure if it's still like that now.
As if a motherfucker buys his booze on the spot. I buy my booze in advance.
That's what I mean.
So what?
It's like, what difference does it make? It's like you can't buy booze at Walmart after 2 a.m. It's like, bitch.
So what?
We buy booze in the middle of the day to drink later on.
Right. It doesn't make any sense. We don't
usually drink it in the middle of the day.
It's church people thinking.
I guess so. There's like, well, if we tell people that they can't drink after 2 a.m., that they can't buy booze after 2 a.m.,
then they won't drink after 2
Then they won't drink after 2
That's not how that shit works.
It's like, no. It's like, you got to plan ahead. Yeah. You got to plan ahead, and so you already have it. So, yeah. So, like I said, probably because she had nothing else to do. Maybe she was a true believer. Who knows? But she did like a lot of... I doubt it. In
my experience, very few of them were.
That's what I mean. I feel like it was more a social thing, and it was kind of like all you could do, and it was just like what you did.
That's what you did. It was appearances.
So that's probably what that was. Now, at the time that the murders happened, like I said, in the late 1890s, or the early 1890s, rather, Andrew Borden was living with his second wife. So the one that was murdered was not her mother. It was her stepmother. Now, the stepmother's name was Abby Durfee Gray. They had actually married... What happened was Andrew Borden had been married to the first wife, who was Sarah. So all of the, kids, it was Lizzie and Emma, who was her older sister. They had also had a sister called Alice, who died when she was 2, although she was born before Lizzie was born. Sarah had died during the Civil War, not because of the Civil War, but just like while the Civil War was going on, she died. When she died, Andrew remarried 2 years later. Now, when he remarried Abby, Emma, the older sister, was 12 years old, and Lizzie was not quite 3. So she was just like a toddler. So Lizzie didn't really remember her birth mother all that much at all. So, you know, you would think that she would kind of see Abby as a mother because that was the only mother that she remembered. Now, the house that they lived in, which still stands, it is a museum and bed and breakfast. So you can actually go and sleep in the room where Abby Borden got murdered, if you're into that. It looks exactly the same, and they even have, like, the crime scene photos, like, in there. And a lot of people go. So the house, and I guess a lot of houses were like this at the time, it was a 2.5 story, like a frame house, and it's really narrow. I saw like this one documentary that said it was only 20 feet wide, although that can't be right. But it's pretty narrow.
Look, I saw the layout. It's wider than 20 feet.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think that was incorrect. But it was one of those houses, and I think you might have brought this up before. It was one of those houses that didn't have hallways. Like all of the rooms, like fed into one another. Yeah. So
I lived in one in Boston. They're fucking Victorian house.
This was in Massachusetts also. This was in Falls River.
And I'll tell you what, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The interior. You got to walk through everybody's room to get to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And then originally there was no kitchen in there.
Yeah.
They're just weird. You know what I mean? There was a place where they...
How the hell did they live back
then?
There
was a place
what were you guys doing?
There was a place where they prepared food, but it wasn't really a kitchen by today's standards.
Yeah.
Now, the one we lived in, it had been turned into a kitchen.
Well, I would hope so.
But, you know what I mean? Originally, I don't even...
Kind of need a kitchen.
Yeah. I don't think there was... it was like weird shit like... I don't think there was a sink. And there was water in there, but, you know what I mean? It was just basins. And
it's bizarre.
And then there wasn't any kind of like electric appliances or gas stoves or anything. There was just like, you know, originally there was like cast iron stoves that were in the centers of the rooms.
Yeah.
Or in the centers of where you cooked.
I mean, like I said, I'm sure
it was crazy layout.
I'm sure it worked out for the people, like how they lived back then, but because we don't have any context for that, really.
Yeah, it's hard to understand
what
they
like
were
for us
doing.
now, you're like, what the fuck? It's like, how the hell did you
Well,
even,
I
like,
think it was always like
huge.
in the corner of a room, a big basket filled with wood is one of the things. And then I think there was other stuff about like big barrels of water in there.
Yeah.
You know, big jugs and barrels of water, you know, and when you don't see what they were working with because it's all long gone, it's hard to understand why the layouts were the way that they were.
Because the layout of this house is super weird. It's
no
like,
refrigeration, too.
It's like the front stairs led up to, there was like a landing, and then there was Lizzie's room that led to Emma's room that led to led to the guest room. And then you had to take the back stairs to go up to the master bedroom, but then there was a door between the master bedroom and I believe Lizzie's room.
Yeah, there was no bathrooms.
So there were connecting doors.
No bathrooms either. Because they all just had chamber pots.
They all just had chamber pots.
Yeah, it was weird as shit. And it was like an appliance you damn had in your room. It looked like a big little cabinet. And it had a little top on it that you opened up. And there was like a thing that would hold a bowl. And you just do your business there. And you take the bowl out and put it under cupboards in the bottom and shut it. And it's just like... And then you lived around in bowls.
Let's put the poop in the drawer.
Bowls of shit and piss in your house. And that's all right. And then, you know, you used it until I guess it was full. And then you threw it out a window. Or something, you know.
But yeah, the thing that cracks me up, it just cracks me up to think of these proper Victorian people with their 50 million layers of clothing on that took like an hour to fucking put on every day. Yeah. And it's like they're basically, like you said, just pooping in a bowl and just like leaving it in there.
Put it in the cupboards. It had a little lid on it.
So, like nowadays, people would be fucking horrified.
Yeah.
And it's just like funny to me that they were like trying to go around being so prim and proper. And I'm like, you're pooping in a bowl and leaving it in your room. Just like stop it with the properness. So now the house where they lived, like I said, it's still there. It was a nice house. However, it was not in the wealthy part of the neighborhood, even though Andrew Borden was very wealthy and could have afforded to live up in the fashionable neighborhood, which is called The Hill, if he had wanted to. This house was actually kind of in a more middle class part of the city. One of the documentaries pointed out, they're like, even on the same street, on the corner was a Chinese laundry, which was something that you would never have seen in the very upper class, and that was something that you kind of looked down upon.
Living around those heathens.
That's what I mean. So this was like a largely, like I said, it was a middle class kind of neighborhood. It was mostly Irish Catholic. There was like a lot of merchants and stuff. However, Andrew Borden appears to have wanted to live here because it was within walking distance of a lot of the the business district, like where a lot of his businesses were, and it was easy for him to get there. And he didn't really seem to care all that much about high society kind of shit. And like I said, he was some people would say he was a miser, he was cheap. I don't think I would go that far, because there's like some evidence that he actually did spend some money on his daughters and stuff, and he wasn't that much of a tightwad. But he was, because he had been brought up, you know, in a modest background and had made his own money, he was a little bit penny pinching, and he didn't really want to spend all this money to just like impress other people, I guess. So it was a decent house, but it was kind of in an unfashionable part of town. Also, it did not have running water inside the house, which wealthy people at the time would have had. It did not even have gas lamps, like, you know, gas that was piped into the house, which also wealthy people at the time would have had. So basically there was running water in the barn, but so you had to go out to the barn, like to the spigot or whatever, and get water out of the barn if you wanted any running water. So they didn't have hot water. They didn't have gas lamps. They didn't have anything like that.
That was rich people stuff.
They were rich.
That cost more, but they didn't come up with that.
Yeah.
So they didn't think it was a necessity.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, this...
that was newfangled.
Yeah.
To have gas and to have running water, you know, in her days. You know, imagine, I bet you her dad didn't grow up with running water.
Well, no, I'm sure he didn't, because he was 70 at this point.
So he didn't think that was a necessity.
Yeah,
fuck that old newfangled shit.
That'll never last.
You know, water doesn't have to run.
Just go to the barn and get. Well, they had a maid, so it's you know, the maid goes and gets it. You don't have to go get it. Yeah. It's like everything's easier when you don't have to do it.
It's funny, you know, it's like, you know, they weren't even at the level of Roman rich people.
Yeah.
Because they had running water.
Yeah.
I saw
like I said,
I saw valves and pipes that they could make.
Yeah, they had their shit
like
together.
Something out of the 1920s.
They had their
Ancient
shit
Romans could handle their business.
Yeah.
They knew about technology.
They weren't pooping in a bowl and just putting it in a drawer.
Their poor people were.
Well,
I don't think they had what you would call commodes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Or toilets.
Yeah.
The Romans didn't have that. But they had a way to get rid of waste.
Yeah.
You know, running water.
Which you'd think would be one of the first things you would think of, really. Yeah. Because who the hell wants
it's
big
hard,
piles
though,
of poop
because
sitting around in your
you got to
house?
flush it, and it goes somewhere, and then there has to be water in the bowl to keep the gases and the stink from coming back up out of the damn, what do you call it, sewage system?
Yeah.
So it was kind of tricky. It wasn't thinking.
It's not as easy as, you know.
We look at it. We look at a toilet the way it works now, and you go, well, of course.
Obviously.
You got the bowl in the back, you got valves and everything, but the Victorian way would have been to make things straight shots down, and it doesn't work. You got to have traps in places where there's water to keep the gases down. And you know.
I think even in wealthy communities, until quite late, I think that they were basically even houses that had something that approximating a toilet or something like that. It just kind of went into like a pile, over there, and then somebody had to like come and collect it.
Or went down into a damn septic tank, but there wasn't water in the bowl to keep the stink down, so they, you know, you probably had to cork it or shit like that, you know, weird thinking. But eventually they came out with, and it was a company called the Crapper Company. Figured out.
You know what? I think that's an urban legend that guy's name was Thomas Crapper.
I think, because I saw pictures of it and it had it written on it. Crapper. That was the company.
I've heard that too, but I think that's.
I don't know. I think it is true. I think it is true. Well, you know, we're arguing over the existence of toilets and the name of toilets. But that was late 1800s.
I'm gonna look that shit up.
I think it was just the very late 1800s. You had the first modern toilets.
Yeah.
That didn't stink to high heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, I think everybody stunk back then, and everyone was just used to it.
I don't think they knew what stink was.
That's what I mean, because everybody stunk, and that was just, you just learned to deal with it. Like after a while, you don't notice it anymore.
And they were keeping that shit in a pot, right, with a lid on it, in the summer without AC.
Well, I kind of want to mention that in this case too when I get to that point, but it's like, not to do with poop, but it's vomit.
We live in Florida, all right?
Yeah.
This house is fucking clean. We have modern amenities. And when this fucking place loses power in the summer...
Doesn't take long.
It don't take long. A couple days later, you're like, man, it was like mildew in here.
Yeah.
And it's because
because we lost power during a hurricane last year, the year before, and it was out for 2 days, 3 days, something like that. And yeah, like within 6 hours.
Within 6 hours.
It started to smell like mold in here.
Yeah, because moisture. Because you need air conditioning to keep
because it's humid as fuck
the
outside.
air dry.
It's Florida.
And the natural ambient air is moist enough to get inside your damn carpets.
Yeah, and make it smell like a wet dog.
The carpet starts smelling like a damn wet dog.
Yep.
So none of these houses in modern Florida, none of the new houses they're not equipped for actual survival. Say like in a post-apocalyptic situation where there's no power or no air conditioning. The houses would fall apart in fucking 10 years easily.
Well, yeah, everything and particularly where we live in Florida. This is this used to be a swamp.
Yeah.
And you're constantly fighting back it returning
fighting the swamp.
To be a swamp.
It wants to be that
because it wants to be a swamp.
Yeah.
So you really have to keep
without electricity
trying to keep the nature at bay.
Without electricity, these houses would vanish very quickly.
Yeah, it wouldn't take long.
No.
They would very quickly be overrun with plants for sure.
Plants and insects.
Insects, mold, everything.
And mold.
Like I said, you can barely keep the insects out.
And disease.
Like when you're trying to, when the power's on and shit like that.
The only thing that survives these kind of environments without power are what they built down here in the Victorian era.
Yeah.
Where the house has 2 or 3 stories and each floor is almost like 18 feet tall.
Yeah.
So you have a place for the heat to go. And then the windows would stretch all the way down from the floor to the ceiling, and then you open them up, lots of them.
Yeah.
So basically, you didn't have walls half the time.
Yeah, you just open the whole fucking wall.
You open all the walls so the damn air could circulate through it. And then they had later on they added fans, belt-driven fans. I remember them.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid in Mississippi, some of the houses you can't air condition them.
Yeah.
Those houses, they're not insulated.
I don't know how people lived in, because my grandmother, she moved to Florida from Tennessee in 1958, and her house, which is still there, other people live in it now, obviously, because she has passed away, but for many years, her house did not have air conditioning.
Yeah.
And even later when I lived there, it only had a window unit.
Yeah.
So basically, you could sleep in the house, but you had to sleep in the dining room or the living room that was right adjacent to, that was right in front of where the air conditioner was. Because the bedrooms in the back of the house, that shit was like a sauna back there. And you couldn't sleep.
And it would have been miserable back in those days because in the summertime, you'd have to open every window.
Yeah. And you would just be crawling with bugs.
And they didn't have screens back then.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So all the bugs would come in.
That's like sleeping outside. You might as well camp outside.
Yeah.
Fuck.
The only screen they had was the damn screen that went around the bed.
Yeah.
The bed,
the bed sheet, or what do you call it? The canopy.
Yeah, they had a canopy and they had a screen that went down through there to keep the mosquitoes out. The house was filled with mosquitoes.
Yeah, it's like no wonder everyone fucking had diseases back then.
Mosquitoes and palmetto bugs, roaches, would have been everywhere.
And shit. Disgusting.
Yeah, I just can't imagine it. Shit.
I can't imagine it. Like I said, I guess they didn't know any better. I have
vague memories of Mississippi where old people living in kind of like those conditions. And we're not talking about fucked up houses. These were beautiful houses. They were like beautiful Victorian plantation houses. But there was no way for air conditioning.
Yeah. And
no way to put screens on those windows. The windows were huge.
Yeah.
They were basically like doors that didn't go all the way down to the damn floor. Yeah. Remember?
Yeah.
Like some out of Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
And you open that shit up, and they didn't have damn walls half the time. Each room had fucking 4 fucking huge glass windows, hand blown stuff from the 1800s. If you broke a window, shit, man, you were shit out of luck. You'd have to hire somebody coming in and cut a special piece of glass. Because remember how those windows were?
Mm-hmm.
Each window was like 7 pieces of glass. It was all very ornate, diamond shapes and shit.
They're really nice, but
really nice, but miserable.
Yeah.
By today's standards.
Yep.
But they didn't notice that shit back then.
Not very practical. Well, like I said, they didn't know any better.
They didn't know any better, yeah.
They didn't know any better. So, like I said, this was a nice house. Like I said, it's still there. You can still visit it. It's a museum and a bed and breakfast at this point. But it wasn't in the best part of town. It wasn't where all the other wealthy people lived. And obviously, Andrew Borden could have afforded to live there had he wanted to. However, he didn't really seem to care about it. Now, on the other hand, Lizzie and Emma were very put out that they were not living on the hill with all the other fashionable families. And it seems that there was some resentment there, that they felt like their father's frugality, let's call it that, was kind of keeping them from living the life that they felt that they deserved. So apparently they complained about it a lot.
His ass was too retro, what they're saying.
To their friends and stuff. And it's like, we could afford to live there with the gas lamps and the running water. And it's like, we could be up there in the society with the other prominent families, and we could be doing the things that prominent families would do. But they were denied that. And I feel like they were kind of resentful about it. Now, like I said, it doesn't seem that Andrew Borden was a complete Scrooge, though, because there is some evidence that he did buy, wealthy, kind of expensive things for his daughters. They think that he bought Lizzie and or Emma, diamonds, diamond jewelry. He bought Lizzie the sealskin cape, which will kind of factored into the case a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. He also, in 1890, 2 years before the murders, he apparently paid for Lizzie to go on a very expensive, tour of Europe with some of their wealthier cousins. Now, you would think that this would, shut her up, because it's okay, just go to Europe for a few months, go to, hang out with the rich people or whatever, but apparently this made her even more resentful because she saw the life that she was missing out on. It's we could be doing this all the time because we have as much money as them, and instead we're just sitting around the house without any running water, without any gas, and without, all of these other social things that all these other people in our family are doing. So apparently that pissed her off even more. Now, there is also some evidence that the relationship between Lizzie and her older sister Emma and their stepmother Abby wasn't the best. As I said, now Emma had been 12 years old when Abby married her father. So she actually did remember her birth mother. Lizzie did not. Emma apparently called Abby by her first name. She didn't call her mom or mother or whatever. Lizzie called her Mrs. Borden. So apparently back in the day, from what I could gather from everything that I read about this, I think that Lizzie actually did call her Abby or mother for a time. Because like I said, this was the only mother that she remembered because she was not even 3, when her dad remarried. However, there was kind of a family conflict after which she began referring to Abby as Mrs. Borden. What ended up happening was that Andrew Borden gave a house to, I believe, Abby's sister. Now, Lizzie and Emma were really upset about this because they're like, what the fuck are you? Just you are giving property to our stepmother's sister, our stepmother's family, and you're not giving us any, and it seemed unfair. So they kind of complained about it.
Exporting the wealth away from the damn core family.
Yeah. So, I don't think they were, they were just mad because why are they getting all this stuff and we're not getting anything? So to kind of appease them, it seems that Andrew Borden gave them the deed to their grandfather's house. And he said, okay, well, you guys can own this house. It was a rental property because, like I said, he owned many. And you can have the rental income from it and manage it and everything like that. So he either gave them it or he gave them it for $1 or some ridiculously low sum like that. Now, apparently they ran it as a rental property for a short period of time. However, because, like I said, this wasn't a real fashionable or desirable neighborhood, the rents were kind of low and the maintenance cost on the house was very high. So the sisters were kind of nah, I'm not really into this being a landlord type of thing. So Andrew said, well, okay, I will buy the house back from you. And apparently he gave them $5,000 for the house, which in today's money is about $140,000. And that was at his, they didn't ask him for the money apparently, but he said, I'll buy it back from you and take it off your hands. So like I said, he was thrifty, but he wasn't a super cheapskate. When they complained, he was here, have a house and stuff. And then when they didn't want to do it anymore, he did offer to buy it back from them for apparently more than it was worth. Okay. So he wasn't a Scrooge or anything like that. Now, there has also been some kind of, because here's the thing. Now, as I said, Lizzie was in the habit of, like I said, after that whole thing happened with the property, apparently that really pissed her off. And that was when evidently she started referring to Abby as Mrs. Borden rather than Abby or mother or whatever. But they had a maid named Bridget. She had worked in the house for 3 years. Now, she said that there didn't really seem to be that much animosity in the house between Abby and Lizzie. They said, now, Lizzie doesn't usually eat with the family. Like, she doesn't take meals with them, which was a little unusual. She spent a lot of time, like, in her own room. But, you know, I don't think, like, Bridget said that there weren't, like, a lot of fights between them and stuff. Now, Emma, the older sister, she said that the relationship between Lizzie and her father was actually fairly close. And the relationship between Lizzie and Abby was, quote unquote, cordial. However, some other friends of Lizzie said that Lizzie used to complain about her stepmother all the time, one of them stating that Lizzie had once called Abby, quote, a mean, good-for-nothing old thing. Mm. So, you know, like I said, that was a friend of Lizzie's that said that she said that. So, let's, actually, look, we're almost at an hour.
I need another drink.
And you need another drink. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about the murders. And we are going to talk about all the theories that swirled in the murders and, like, what happened after the murders.
So the plot is going to thicken.
The plot is going to thicken.
It's going to thicken in this second half.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. Tom's going to go refresh his drink. And we will be back in just a few minutes.
Little Beijing. You're just purring up a storm. You're so pretty. Sitting on Mama's keyboard. Sitting on Mama's keyboard. So she can't type. Yeah. You don't care, do you? You're just a kitty. You don't care about typing. That's right. You just want to get petted and that's all you care about. That's okay. Like, it's Sunday morning. And Pookie just does not want to get out of bed. Yeah, I know. You've been sleeping there all morning. Mommy had to climb out around you. Because that's where Mommy sleeps. She just snuggled right up in my armpit and just stayed there. Oh my goodness. Look at her little legs, are so funny. Her little legs look like little drumsticks. KFC Pookie. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm keeping you awake. Being lazy on Sunday morning.
You love true crime. I love true crime. And I've spent the last 3 years compiling a series of the most intriguing unsolved murders of the 20th century. It's called The Faceless Villain, and Volume 3 is available now. Featuring such fascinating cases as the Ketty murders, the Carrie Babies case, the Frog Boys, the Alcasar murders, and the Inokashira Park dismemberment incident, The Faceless Villain Volume 3 is an involving exploration of unsolved slayings spanning the years from 1980 to 1999. Pick up your copy in print or ebook formats on Amazon, or download the audiobook version from audible.com, and get ready for a chilling journey through modern crime history. All right, we are back. Tom has refilled his drink. I actually didn't need to refill mine. I still have a little bit left.
Yep.
Talking about the Lizzie Borden case, and now we're going to talk about the actual day of the murders, which was Thursday, August 4th, 1892. Now, as was their custom, the Borden family was up fairly early on this particular day. Now, Emma Borden, the older sister of Lizzie Borden, Emma was 42 years old at this stage. She was actually not in the house. She had gone to visit friends in Fairhaven, which was a town about 15 miles away. So she wasn't in the house at the time. Also in the house was the Borden sisters' Uncle John. Now, this was John Morse. Now, he was actually the brother of their biological mother, who had passed away many years before. Now, he had apparently, the day before the murders, he had turned up unannounced. And he was apparently planning to stay in the house overnight, but he hadn't, like, brought any luggage or anything like that. This wasn't all that unusual because John Morse actually, he managed a lot of, like, business affairs for Andrew Borden, and he actually visited the family several times a year. So it wasn't all that strange for him to turn up to stay at the house because he had, like, a lot of business interests in Falls River. So he would, a few times a year, he would turn up at their house and stay there and, like, do his business in town and then, like, go back to Dartmouth where he was from. So, on this particular day, August 4th, 1892, first person up in the house was, as you would imagine, was Bridget Sullivan, the maid. She woke up at 6 a.m. She was actually Irish. She had come to the United States in 1886 and had started working for the Bordens in 1889. Now, one thing that was very interesting was that both Emma and Lizzie, even though this girl's name was Bridget, they actually called her Maggie because that was the name of their former maid. So it's almost like they couldn't be bothered to learn another name because she was just like a lowly servant or whatever. So they called her Maggie, and I guess Bridget didn't really have much choice but to answer to it because otherwise she wouldn't get paid or whatever. So, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's kind of some asshole-ish shit.
It is kind of like, and like I said,
what they're talking about, this is like a real class-oriented
It
type.
is very. It is
They're
very.
like, fuck you, we're just going to call you the same one.
And I mean, like I said, I read a book that came out in 1937 that was about this case. And it had the whole trial transcripts and everything like that. And a lot of people apparently thought of Lizzie and Emma to a lesser extent as they were very haughty. They were very society. And like I said, they were kind of resentful that they had all this money, but were not living the high life as they apparently thought that they were entitled to. So I guess that was some little like passive aggressive thing they could do, was just like refer to the servant as the name of the previous servant, because there's like, we couldn't even be bothered to like learn what your name is. We're just going to call you by the name of the last girl.
Yeah, so I can kind of get a feeling about what the environment is. You know what I mean? They feel that they're being held back by their dad.
Yeah, I do think that there was an aspect of that. Because, like I said, I don't think there was a lot of animosity between Lizzie and her dad, necessarily. There was a lot between Lizzie and her stepmother, by all accounts. But I do feel like there was some shit that they thought that their dad was holding them back from the life that they thought that they deserved.
They're seeing this guy as something from another era.
Yeah.
They're just putting up with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a throwback.
Yeah, he definitely did seem like that. Like I said, he was...
That's what they're thinking of, man.
Kind of a little bit. Like I said, I don't want to say cheapskate or tightwad or anything like that. He was thrifty, we'll say that. So the maid, Bridget, was 26 years old at this point. Now, she comes downstairs. She had a room in the attic. She comes down around 6 a.m. She builds a fire in the kitchen and starts cooking breakfast. An hour later, Andrew and Abby Borden, husband and wife, they came down to breakfast. Also, John Morse came down for breakfast. Andrew at this stage, as I said, was 70 years old. His wife was about 64 years old. So they came down to eat breakfast with their house guest, who was, Lizzie and Emma's uncle, John. And they kind of sat around the table. This was about 7 a.m. They sat around the table for about an hour, discussing things, business, and various other things. A little before 8 a.m., John Morse left the house. He was going to go visit some relatives at a house about a mile away. He took a streetcar, I believe, and was seen on the streetcar. So, that'll factor into the case later. After he left the house, Andrew Borden locked the screen door after him. Now, apparently this was something that was kind of, even though... this is so weird. Okay, so apparently there had been a break-in at the house in 1891, like the year before. And so after this break-in, and I'll get into that in a minute, but Andrew Borden had been apparently kind of paranoid about security. So the front door, like the screen door and everything, had like 3 different locks on it. So he always kept it, like, the minute that anybody left the house, he would lock the fucking doors. Also, all the rooms upstairs, and as I said, they were all, like, adjoining. They all, like, opened into one another. Those were all kept locked as well. Andrew had a key to, like, a lot of the house, but he kept them in plain sight, but he kept all the doors locked pretty much all the time. Now, some of the ones upstairs, I could see that as kind of like maybe that was a privacy issue because, like I said, there was no halls. Like, all the rooms, like, opened up into one another, which, yeah, you would want to keep that shit.
It's annoying as shit. I lived in
Yeah, you would want to keep your shit locked in between. Like, I understand that. But front door, back door, side door, everything like that, it's like he kept it locked and there was, like, multiple locks on there. So
I don't know
like,
what
really
the fuck they were fucking thinking. I mean,
I don't know
the
either.
people that engineered those houses also lived in them.
Yeah.
Didn't they have any kind of concept of privacy? I guess not.
I guess not. Or they wouldn't have designed them like that.
I mean, they say China's like that. That the Chinese have no expectation of privacy. They don't know anything about it.
I think at that...
It might be like that.
That's what I mean. I think at that stage, like I said, if there had been any concept of privacy, I don't think they would have designed houses in that fashion.
Right.
So I think the fact that was just like how people lived. Like it was...
Constantly under societal scrutiny. And
to get to, like, for example, to get to the guest room where the Uncle John Morse was staying, you had to go through, as far as my understanding, you had to go through Lizzie's room and Emma's room.
Yeah.
To get to the guest room.
Yeah.
Or you would have to go up the back stairs and go through the master bedroom and then then like that.
It's ridiculous. I lived in one of them motherfuckers. It doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Like I said, as far as I understand from
a modern person has to live in there by themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like,
because like,
get the fuck out of here.
Who the fuck wants somebody like traipsing through your room every time they have to go to the can?
Every 10 minutes someone's walking through your fucking room.
That would really suck. I don't like people walking in our room anytime. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like kind of fucking weird. So all right. Now, a couple of minutes after John Morse left the house to go on his, visiting the relatives, Lizzie comes downstairs. Now, she had not eaten breakfast with the family. Apparently, it was not her habit to do so. She had slept a little bit late. She came downstairs, but she said she wasn't hungry. She had a cup of coffee and maybe ate a cookie. Now, there had been, like, a couple of days prior to this, there had been perhaps a stomach bug, perhaps food poisoning, something like that, going around this household. And it's speculated that maybe Lizzie had still had a touch of that, and maybe that's why she wasn't hungry. Bridget had a bit of it as well, because she said shortly after breakfast she had to go outside and throw up. What had happened was that 2 days prior to the murders, both Andrew and Abby Borden had been violently ill in the middle of the night and had both vomited several times, which is what made me think of the whole, pooping in the bowl type of thing. Yeah. Because I remember seeing a documentary a long time ago about this, and you have to imagine this was in August. It was Massachusetts, yes, but this was an unusually hot summer.
Yeah.
It was over 100 degrees before noon on this particular day, which is some Florida shit right there.
So think about that shit.
So I imagine, since it was the middle of the night, that Andrew and Abby had barfed into these bowls many times, and it just stayed there.
Yeah, in that heat.
In the heat.
Yeah.
And fermented.
Yeah.
So that's something that's kind of stuck with me all these years, because I'm like, imagine how the smell would have made you barf again. Yeah, holy crap.
We take so much shit for granted.
We do.
I mean, we have air conditioning.
Yeah. We have water, we have toilets.
Now, when I was living in Brazil back in the 80s, the air conditioning was very rare. But it got hot there, all right? But it was cool. And it was because everything was made out of concrete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And concrete kind of it stays cold. You're in this big concrete apartment complex, but for some reason, and the ceilings were high. Yeah. For some reason, you got used to it. It didn't seem hot. I don't think it was, but we got comfortable quickly.
Yeah.
But but it's because of the construction of the houses. Well, I lived in one of those Victorian type houses. No. It didn't stay cold. It didn't stay cold.
No one likes that.
It doesn't stay cold and it doesn't stay warm. There's just no insulation, one way or the other.
And the thing about, and maybe the conditions were the same, but I mean, in Florida, the thing about it is that even when it's hot, like, and I've heard this about people that like live in like desert type areas, like Arizona or New Mexico or something like
dry.
That. Yeah. It's hot, but it's like dry.
Yeah, and it's cold at night.
In Florida, the problem is that even if there is a breeze,
it's 100% humidity.
A hot, wet breeze. So it's not like it, and in a way, like sometimes they're like, oh, well, it rains every day. That just makes it worse because it makes it more oppressive and like more humid. Yeah. Because after it'll only rain for like a few, like half an hour, and then all of a sudden it's like sauna because it's like it's steamy.
It's always pretty much 100% humidity here.
Yeah, it's just
it doesn't matter if it's hot or cold. Yeah, the cold is penetrating too. But there's a podcast. There's a YouTuber named Sargon of Akkad from England, and he came here for a visit right up the street where Disneyland is, and he did a live stream out there on the balcony of Disney Hotel.
He just couldn't believe it. Probably.
Up there about 30. Yeah, he's up there 30 floors above the heat, going, I can't believe it. He goes, there's no way to describe this to anyone who's never been to Florida.
Well,
he says, this is like being in Satan's ass crack. He says, it's like being covered in wet, hot blankets.
Yep.
And that's what it's like. You just can't sweat.
That's what, well, and that's another thing, because, like, humans have evolved. It's like sweat, and it's supposed to evaporate and cool you off.
That don't
which,
work.
in normal conditions, that works, but in Florida, it doesn't work because it's not dry enough to dry. So, basically, you just sweat, and then it just builds up.
Yeah, you
so
can't
you just,
get rid of any heat.
So, honestly, and even sometimes, and we have, feel like you didn't dry off.
Yeah.
So, because you're just, like, still sticky.
Some summers, I just say, fuck it, I'm staying indoors.
I think we've been entire summers without,
whole summers
going outside.
We just like rarely go outside,
except for maybe here to the car to go
just to run some errands. So you're like, fuck it, I ain't going outside.
It's like, and I did that when I was a kid too. It's like one summer came, everybody's like, yeah, we're just gonna sit in here by the air conditioner.
The only people that are outside are people that have to go outside.
It's like no one wants to. It's terrible. But so now, one speculation, like I said, nobody is entirely sure why a lot of the family members had been sick. Apparently, they had all been vomiting and stuff. Some speculation was that it was food poisoning because, from what I could determine, they had been eating off the same leg of mutton from between 4 to 6 days. Like, it started out, like, when it was still fresh, apparently. They ate it as, like, a leg of mutton, but I guess it was a lot of leftovers. So they kind of, like, took some of it, and then they would eat it cold, and then they made some of it into soup.
Yeah, but there was no cold then, because there was no refrigeration.
And so they ate off it for several... And, like, it was pretty gross, because it's like... I'm sitting there, like, reading some of the old newspaper reports, and it's like they're eating, like, mutton soup for breakfast. I'm like, what the fuck are you thinking? No wonder you feel like vomiting.
Yeah, and there was no real refrigeration then. They had ice boxes, but they didn't...
Yeah, and they did have an ice box in the Borden house.
Yeah, but if you've ever dealt with an ice chest or an ice box, they don't really keep anything cold. They just... Especially not in 100-degree heat.
Because like I said, this was unusually hot.
It was
summer.
At 100 degrees, that ice box would probably be about 70 degrees in there.
Which
that's room temperature for us.
Not ideal,
which means that food would spoil. And I'm pretty sure they ate lots of rotten food.
They
probably didn't even notice that it was rotten because they were probably just used to eating shit that was rotten.
Yeah. So a lot of people pointed out that maybe it was this mutton because they'd been eating off it for several days. There had also been some swordfish that they had eaten, which could have been the cause of some food poisoning as well.
Fish goes bad.
It does,
quick.
So so it may have been food poisoning.
Yeah.
So like I said, there had been this kind of illness going around the house.
Food poisoning, probably.
So on the day of the murders, it was about 9:15. Andrew Borden leaves the house and he goes downtown, like down to the city, to take care of his business interests. He had like some calls to make. He was going to go in the banks and check on all his stuff, and like he usually did. He was making his rounds. Abby Borden, the stepmother, she actually went upstairs to make the bed in the guest room that John Morse was staying in, because apparently Bridget, they had a maid, Bridget. She was the only servant in the house. Apparently, she did not clean up the bedrooms. She only cleaned other parts of the house. The bedrooms, I guess, were the responsibility of the people that slept in the bedrooms. Mm-hmm. So Abby went up there to kind of straighten up John Morse's room, the guest room. At this point, she also asked Bridget to please go outside and wash all the windows on the house. 9:30, Abby Borden comes downstairs for a few minutes and says that she needed to get fresh pillowcases for the bed. So she gets fresh pillowcases and then she goes back upstairs to the guest room. Bridget, who is the maid, she goes outside. She goes to the barn to get pails and to get some water because, like I said, the barn was the only place where there was running water. So she goes in there to get all that stuff and she starts washing the windows on the outside of the house. So she's doing that. They also think she paused for a few moments to talk to another servant girl who worked for the Kellys next door. They were kind of like talking over the fence. She finished the outside of the windows at about 10:30 and then goes back inside and starts washing the windows on the inside. So about 10:45, Andrew Borden arrives home. I don't know if this was earlier than expected or if this was about the time that he usually came home, because it could be that he wasn't feeling all that well, so he came home earlier than he would have normally. I'm not really entirely sure. I've seen sources saying both things. Now, apparently he's trying to get in the house, and his I guess his key wouldn't work. I don't know if like the lock was stuck or the door was stuck or something like that. And there were, like I said, there were 3 locks on the door because they were very careful to lock the doors after somebody left. So apparently Andrew Borden was trying to get into the house and couldn't get in. So he had to ring the doorbell. So Bridget had to come down and let him in, into the house. Now at this point, apparently, Lizzie came downstairs and she told her father that Abby had gone out because a message had come to the house, like a note had come to the house earlier saying that a friend of hers across town was sick and that she had gone out to visit them. This was not the case, as we will soon say. So Andrew Borden takes the key to his bedroom because, like I said, all the doors were locked at all times. He takes his bedroom key off the shelf and he goes back up the back stairs because that was the only way that you could get to his room. You couldn't really... you could get there from the front staircase, but you had to go through Lizzie's room, and it was a big ordeal. So he goes up the back stairs, and he comes, he was up there for a couple of minutes, and then he came back down, and he decides that he's going to take a nap on the sofa, because like I said, apparently he hadn't been feeling very well the last couple of days. At this point, Lizzie decides that she's going to iron some handkerchiefs, like you do, and starts to heat up the iron. Now, she asks Maggie at this point, and Maggie remembered this later at the inquest. She said that Lizzie had been pointedly asking her, are you going out today? Are you going out this afternoon? And then she told her that, the department store downstairs, which is called, or downtown, which is called Sargent's, they're like, they're having this big sale. It's like this fabric that we needed. It's like, it's only 8 cents a yard. You should go get some, blah, blah, blah. But Bridget said, it's like, it was really hot out. She had spent all morning washing windows. She was really tired. She still wasn't feeling very well because she had a little bit of this food poisoning or whatever was going around. She's like, I'm probably not going to go out. I don't really feel all that well. So there was that whole thing. So it seemed like Lizzie was like feeling her out. Like, are you going to be in the house? Are you not going to be in the house? What's going on? You know what I mean? Now, Bridget decides that she's kind of worn out, so she is going to go up to her room in the attic, and she's going to take a nap, like, before she starts, like, making lunch or whatever, because she doesn't feel all that well. So she goes up to her room, she lays down, she kind of, like, half dozes off or whatever. She said she did remember hearing the clock in the town square or whatever, like, striking 11. So it was shortly after 11 o'clock, after she heard the clock, she said that she heard Lizzie shouting from the bottom of the back stairs, Maggie, come down. So Maggie immediately gets up, or Bridget rather. She called her Maggie, that wasn't even her name. But so Bridget gets up, she puts her shoes on, she runs down there. She's like, what's the matter? What's the matter? Lizzie says, come down quick. Father's dead. Somebody's come in and killed him. So Bridget starts to run toward the sitting room, which was where Andrew Borden's body was. Lizzie says to her, don't go in there. Go get Dr. Bowen, who was their family physician. He was also a friend of the family. He lived like across the street diagonally from them. So she said, go get Dr. Bowen. He's dead. You don't want to see it. So Bridget goes over to Dr. Bowen's house. Now, when she got there, Dr. Bowen was out, but his wife, Bridget told the wife, Mrs. Bowen, that Andrew Borden was dead, and she's like, tell him to come over to the house right away when he gets back. Now, as soon as Bridget gets back, because Andrew Borden had just come in the house like half an hour before. So Bridget is like, well, if somebody came in and killed Andrew Borden, who was just laying on the couch, it's like Lizzie was in the house when it happened. So she, asks Lizzie, where were you when this happened? Just because she was curious. Now, Lizzie apparently told her, I was out in the yard, I heard a groan, and then I came in. The screen door was wide open. This was the screen door that had 3 locks on it. Now, it had been locked. I guess she said that she went out, to the barn or the yard or whatever, and then she came back, the screen door was open, and her father was dead.
They did have screens.
Yeah.
I didn't think
they had
screens.
A screen door. I don't know about the windows.
I wonder what a screen door looked like back then.
I don't know.
Was it just made out of wicker? Woven? Couldn't have been a screen like we have today.
Well, they
don't
did
think they had
have.
that,
Well,
really.
I think they did have metal screens because one of Lizzie Borden's first stories was that she had gone to the barn to find some metal or something like that to repair part of a screen. So maybe it had been.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did have screens.
Maybe they did.
There was in the southern houses I remember in the windows there was no place to put screens.
Yeah.
The big tall ones, like
Well, like
the
I said,
17,
windows might have been a
1800s.
different. This is a screen door, so it's
Right.
like I'm not really sure if like windows might have been a different
Okay.
issue. But yeah, so so
they were retrofitted after, but
Yeah.
I think, but
well, yeah, I mean, as you would.
Yeah.
Because like I said, who the fuck wants their windows open just
yeah.
like
But back in
open-
the old days,
open
when
for
the win-
anything to fucking fly in there?
back in the old days when a window was open, that fucker was open. You know?
Birds flying in there, bats
17
flying in there,
Yeah, 1700s and
mad
the
gasser
1800s. and there was-
Mattoon climbing in there.
Yeah, 1700s, 1800s, there were no screens like that.
Yeah.
When she's saying screen door, I wonder what it looked like in the late 1800s.
I don't really know. And like I said, I don't know if that screen door is still on the house now because they've
Right.
tried to preserve the house as much as possible from the time. You know what I
Okay,
mean? Because
yeah.
it's a museum and you can stay in there now. So then, since Dr. Bowen was not home, Lizzie sends Bridget to go and see a friend of theirs who lived a few blocks away, whose name was Alice Russell. Now, at this point, like, the neighbors didn't really know what was going on, but apparently they knew something was going on because all the houses were kind of close together. Everyone was kind of knew each other in the neighborhood. So they kind of start, like, gathering around the house because they're curious to see what's going on. Somebody called the police. Now, the next door neighbor, whose name was Adelaide Churchill, she comes over, and Lizzie is in the back door of the house, like the back entrance, and she says, well, what's wrong? And Lizzie says, someone has killed father. Now, this woman, because these people were apparently no slouches, they also asked, where was Lizzie when the father got killed? Because they're presuming that she was in the house, which she was. So she asked, where were you when it happened? And Lizzie says, I went to the barn to get a piece of iron. Now, I've heard differing stories. It's like, it seemed like she said that she was going to get metal to like fix a screen door, but then later she said that she was going to the barn to get some iron to make some fishing sinkers because she was going on a fishing trip in a few days and she wanted to make some. So that was kind of the story that she went with later on. So she just said, I'm going to get a piece of iron. So then Mrs. Churchill says, where is your mother? Now, Lizzie says, I don't know. But it's like she got a note this morning to go see a friend of hers that was sick. But then she said, and I don't know if this is a direct quote. This might be right from the trial transcripts. And this is what Mrs. Churchill said that Lizzie said to her at the time. She says, I don't know that she is killed too, for I thought I heard her come in. Then she said, Father must have an enemy, for we have all been sick and we think the milk has been poisoned. So apparently Mrs. Churchill said that this was what Lizzie told her shortly after.
Lizzie sounds like she's trying to cast blame on somebody else right away.
That's what, yeah. And like I said, I'll kind of get into that.
Yeah. I always thought she did it. But
I kind of suspect that she did it as well. But if she did, she was like really creepily calm about it. Because there were some like weird details about this that, that kind of suggested that.
well, I think she had.
She was in the house talking to people because the two people, like Abby and Andrew, were killed an hour and a half apart. So she like just did normal shit and like talked to people like in that time span.
Well, I think she thought she had reason.
She probably did. Like
Yeah.
I said, I don't really see.
I'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But
So at this point, Dr. Bowen had come back from wherever he was. So he comes to the house. Now he examines the body of Andrew Borden. At this point, Abby has not been found yet. He asked for a sheet to cover it up. He determined pretty much right away, and if you've seen the crime scene photo, which is a very famous photo, Andrew Borden's face was pretty much obliterated.
I saw videos of it. It was pretty fucking gruesome.
It's nasty
It was
looking.
just blows over and over again, around in the same spot on his head.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
in his face. Pretty much, they determined later at the autopsy that he had been struck with 11 blows from an axe or a hatchet.
Yeah.
He looks like, in the picture, this is kind of fucked up to say, in the picture, he looks like the aliens from They Live. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. Just because the picture that they took is just like blood
Yeah.
and like his face is like, it doesn't look like a face anymore because it's like smashed.
Well, the face is kind of gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
So it was, like I said, 11 blows. One of his eyes had been cut completely in half. which made them determine that it's likely he had been sleeping when he was attacked. His nose had been completely severed. Yeah. So all of his face was completely obliterated. Like I said, on one particular
He was
side.
definitely sleeping on that couch based on that photo when he got hit. He didn't know what hit him.
I don't think he did, because they're sure that either the first or the second blow would have killed him.
Yeah.
And just the killer just kept hitting.
To make sure, of course.
To make sure they were dead. So because his face was completely smashed. There was blood on blood on the face, obviously, blood on the couch. There was also blood on the wall over the sofa. There was blood on the floor. There was also blood on a picture hanging above the wall. They determined that he had been attacked from above and behind when he was sleeping. Now, at this point, poor Abby Borden, somebody thought, hey, maybe Abby is in the house somewhere and she is also dead. So Lizzie says to Bridget, I'm almost positive I heard her coming in. Why don't you go upstairs and check that shit out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So Bridget was like, no, I don't want to do that by myself. So her and Mrs. Churchill went up the stairs. Now, Mrs. Churchill was the first person to see, because when you went up the stairs, like from the landing, you could kind of see into the bedrooms, and you could see kind of like Abby's feet like sticking out, like, you know, her shoes were like that. So they went up there. They saw that Abby Borden was also dead. Her head was also pretty much obliterated. She was kind of laying on the other side of the bed, and they very quickly ran back downstairs. A neighbor said, is there another body? And Mrs. Churchill said, yes, she's up there. Dr. Bowen goes upstairs to examine Mrs. Borden. It turned out that she had been struck with the same hatchet or axe 19 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
I think there were a lot of more from the back, too.
They were.
Yeah.
They think that probably she was, like, leaned over, like, doing something on the bed. Now, the bed had been made. Like, they said that the bed was made really nicely. Like, the pillowcases were on and everything like that. Because, like I said, about 9:30, she had gone up with pillowcases to put them on the bed and everything. So that had been done. The bed was all made. But she was, like, laying on the other side of it. So somebody had probably just come up behind her and just, like, whacked her and just kept whacking her. And then she just, like, laid down there. Now, the blood on Mrs. Borden was very dark and very congealed. And her body was kind of cold compared to Andrew Borden's body, because they figured, I mean, Andrew Borden, like I said, had only come home like half an hour before the body was found. So they were speculating that Abby Borden had been killed between an hour to 90 minutes before Andrew Borden had been killed. Now...
Wait a minute, hold on. But what'd you say? Who had been killed? What?
Abby had been killed 90 minutes before Andrew.
That's what I thought. Okay, good.
90 minutes.
I always figured she was the first one to be killed.
She was the first one to get killed. And then, well, that's what's weird, is they're speculating that somebody, maybe Lizzie, maybe not, killed Abby and then hung out for an hour and a half until Andrew came home and then killed him as well.
Yeah, that could be. Whatever it was, I thought that she got killed first, possibly while he was asleep.
No, he wasn't home.
He wasn't even home yet.
No. He didn't get home until a little bit after 11. He was out.
So the stepmom was killed first. Andrew comes in and falls asleep upstairs without even checking.
No, he fell asleep downstairs in the sitting room on the couch.
On the sitting room. Okay, yeah, I got it backwards. But he fell asleep on that damn couch without even checking the house out, which means that he spoke to somebody. I guarantee you it was fucking Lizzie. He comes in, fucking talks to Lizzie, and Lizzie's acting normal and fucking goes to sleep.
The weird thing is that I thought they said...
He was probably like, where, you know, where's your stepmom? She's like, oh, she's asleep. That's probably what she told her.
No, Lizzie told him that she had gone out.
Yeah?
He said...
But do we know that she said that? That's what she said.
Everybody said that. Bridget said that. Like, several people said that she said that, and she told other people this later on. She said, I thought that she was out because she got a note this morning that a friend of hers was sick and she, like, left.
Okay, well, she said she was either asleep or she was out, but she knew that she had already killed her stepmom. Yeah. That's what I think.
That's what I mean. So it seemed, like, a little suspicious.
Yeah. I think what she really did, she told him that she was asleep. Don't go in there and wake her up. And that kept him out of that room.
Although, like I said, according to Bridget, I guess, or like the trial transcripts, they said that when Andrew came home, he did go upstairs to the room, but apparently he didn't see anything. So I don't really know. Like, I don't know what room he went into. I don't know if him and Abby had separate rooms.
Who says this?
I'm just saying, I don't know. It must have been Bridget because she was the only other person in the house. She said that he went upstairs briefly when he came home and then came back down and then decided to take a nap on the couch.
That stepmom's body was in that house.
Yeah. The body must have been there. They think that she died about 9:30 a.m., which was about an hour and a half before Andrew got home. Like a little more than an hour and a half.
She was down on the floor kind of behind that bed, and I think maybe you wouldn't be able to see her from the door.
No, because when Mrs. Churchill and Bridget went up the stairs to see where Abby Borden was, as soon as they went up on the landing, they said as soon as you went up on the landing, you could see through the floor, like they could see her feet, like sticking out from behind the bed. So she was up there, like she had been up there for like an hour and a half.
That still doesn't save Borden. I think Borden killed her.
Well, I think so too, but it's like I said, it's mostly because I don't really see how she could have done it, but I don't see how anyone else could have done it either. Like it seems more improbable that someone else did it.
Yeah, there's this whole concept of somebody just sneaking in to kill these two people and then to leave.
Yeah, it's possible, but like I said, it's improbable. Yeah. I think it's more probable that Lizzie killed. I'm not saying that she did. I'm just saying that it's more probable that she did.
I think she did.
Because it would be very, very weird if it had happened any other way. Very weird.
I think she killed him.
So apparently, Dr. Bowen... he was the one he sent a telegram to Emma, who, as I said, was visiting friends in a town about 15 miles away. He also assisted with the autopsies. He gave Lizzie a tranquilizer, because even though, by all accounts, she was not, like, freaking out or anything like that, she was pretty calm. But, so he was kind of, like, in the house from the very beginning. Later conspiracy theories have even, like, pointed the finger of blame at him, although there's not really any motive, so I'm not really going to give that much credence. So, the police were called about 11:15 a.m. Now, as it happened on this particular day, it was the day of the annual picnic of the Fall River Police Department. So 2/3 of the police force were having a clam bake over at Rocky Point. Now, apparently at first, only one officer named George Allen was sent to the house. Now, he goes to the house, apparently. He sees the dead body in the front room, and then he runs back to the station house, which was only a block or two away, and tells the city marshal about what happened. So apparently there was a half-hour gap there where after the police arrived, there were no, like, authority figures other than, like, a doctor or anything like that. Now, this is kind of a common thing, and I've written about a lot of these kind of cases, late 19th century, early 20th century. They didn't really quite have a handle on that whole forensic science thing yet. Yeah. So it's like they really didn't really seem to have any compunctions about letting people just, like... run through the house and like touch shit and everything like that, because I guess they didn't really.
Well, they didn't have fingerprinting yet.
Yeah, not really.
They had no concept of DNA.
No, of course not.
I think the best tool that they had at that time was photographs.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't the kind of situation where it would make a difference to them that somebody had seen it.
It's like, I feel like they weren't really, I mean, I'm not saying they were dummies, but it didn't really seem to occur to them. It's like, can we not have, like, all the fucking neighbors and, like, family members, like, running through the house, like, looking at the body, like, consoling Lizzie, like, you know what I mean? It's like, it seems like you're just, like, contaminating evidence, but they didn't really seem to... That didn't really seem like a big deal to them.
I don't think it really was.
I don't think it was either. I don't think they had much
They didn't have the technology or the fucking... Right. You know what I mean? They didn't have, or even the investigative techniques that you need.
Yeah, because like I said, fingerprinting at this point had been used in some cases, but it was still very much in its infancy. You know what I mean?
And then whether or not that would have stood up in court, they would say, oh, well... Who's to say that people don't have the same fingerprints?
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah,
It's only the 19th century. Right, we don't know anything about that kind of shit. So apparently during this 30 minutes, like after the lone police officer arrived and then went back to the station house to like tell all the other cops, apparently a county medical examiner named Dr. Dolan happened to walk by the house. Dr. Bowen, who was in the house, said, "Hey man, come in here. I need your help." So Dr. Dolan comes in. He examines the bodies. Now, Dr. Bowen apparently told him the story that Lizzie had said about, oh, we've all been sick and we think the milk is poisoned. So what Dr. Dolan did, because like I said, not everyone was dummies. They did like think of some things that would occur to people today. What he did, they did the autopsy, like the first autopsy, just in the house. Because, you know, that's just what you did, I guess. So the bodies are in the house. Dr. Dolan cuts the stomachs out of both the victims and sends them to the Harvard Medical School for analysis. He also sent a sample of the family's milk supply to see if it was poisoned. However, no evidence of poison was found. Although, like I said, I feel like all this vomiting and stuff like that, I don't think it was poison. I think it was probably food poisoning.
Yeah, and they would have known the difference back then.
Because they were eating off the same leg of mutton. And,
rotten mutton.
Or the swordfish, or whatever it was.
Shit,
there was a lot of things that they ate. And like I said, it was very, very hot that summer. Bacteria would have been having a fucking field day.
Yeah, rotten food.
I'm sure that it was probably something like that because pretty much everyone in the house had been at least mildly ill. And, Abby had been violently ill. And apparently Andrew had too, although he was kind of like cranky about it the next day. So, so over the next few days, the police begin an investigation. Now, at the first stage, no one suspected that Lizzie Borden could be involved because, she was she was a spinster, yes, but it's like, she taught Sunday school. She was a very upstanding citizen. She was from a prominent family. It's like, and as I said, a murder this brutal, I mean, the dad got 11 axe wounds. The stepmom had 19 axe wounds. This is apparently a very violent, a very brutal attack by somebody that had a lot of rage. And at the time, I think it was the common perception that women just didn't do that kind of shit, especially kind of like higher society women or women with her reputation. So I don't think for the first few days after the murders, I don't think anyone really thought that Lizzie Borden could have been responsible. Everyone just kind of like took her word for it, like that things happened the way that she said that they had happened. Yeah. So now, and there were a couple other people that came forward, like, a couple, like there was one boy that said, oh, I saw this like a strange man, like jumping over the back fence of the Borden property. They did actually find a guy that matched that description, but he had an alibi, like he was somewhere else when the murders occurred. They also kind of they found this bloody hatchet at this farm in South Somerset, but later when they tested the blood, it was chicken blood. So all this other kind of stuff. So like all this kind of stuff happened, but a few days later, the police couldn't help but note that kind of the evidence was converging on maybe Lizzie had something to do with this stuff. So what I want to do now is I kind of want to go, because this is how the investigation went. And as they did interviews, as they collected evidence and stuff like that, they think that there were some things that happened the day before the murders, the day of the murders, the day after the murders, that kind of were circumstantial, but tended to suggest that maybe Lizzie either did the murders or knew who did, or like was involved somehow. So we're going back to the day before the murders, which was August 3rd. Now, there were a few things that happened on this day that were a little bit strange. So, as I said, the night before this day, Andrew and Abby had been very sick and they'd been vomiting during the night. Now, Abby had actually gone over to Dr. Bowen and said that, everyone in the house has been sick. I think that we have been poisoned. So Abby thought that they had been poisoned, and she went to the doctor completely unsolicited and said that she thought that that's why everyone was sick. Now, the doctor didn't really believe it, and he's like, you're fine. It's probably just nothing. Just go home and deal with it. However, he did drop in the next day. However, Andrew was kind of a dick, and he said to the doctor, he's like, hey, I'm not sick and I'm not paying for an unsolicited house call, so you can just go on your way. So there was that. Now, another very damning incident took place on August 3rd as well. Now, apparently there was this druggist who worked at Smith's drugstore. He was a clerk there. His name was Eli Bentz. He told the police that the day before the murders, Lizzie had come into the store and attempted to buy 10 cents worth of prussic acid, which
That's a poison.
is very poisonous. She said, according to him, that she needed it to kill moths on a sealskin cape. The same sealskin cape, apparently, that her dad had bought her several years before. Now, he would not sell it to her because apparently you needed a prescription for this because it was highly poisonous. It did have other, applications, obviously, but you couldn't just walk in there and buy it because it was a poison.
Why do you need poison to kill moths on a cape?
And
that's some ridiculous shit.
And some
right
people
there.
have said, like some sources I read said that moths are not really a problem on seal
fur.
skin.
Right, yeah, fur. They're not into fur.
Right.
They're more into like cotton weaves.
Right. So they thought that was a little strange.
Yeah. She made that shit up.
So, yeah. Now, it should be noted that even though Lizzie denied going into Smith's drugstore, not only the clerk, said that she had tried to buy the poison, but also another customer and another clerk had identified her. Because keep in mind that, like I said, this is a fairly close-knit community. I don't think the druggist at the time knew what her name was, but he had seen her around town. Like, he knew of her. Like, he knew who she was. So he would have known her by sight. So apparently, the day before the murder, she had gone in and tried to buy poison. Now, later, the prosecutor on the case, when it eventually went to trial, whose name was Hosea Knowlton, he also said that in the house, he had found like a book that was full of like different things, like herbal remedies, like recipes, medicine type stuff. He had found a book in the house, and that when the book opened, like it naturally opened to the page, which was about prussic acid, which seemed a little fishy. Now, there was also, as I said, the day before the murders, the uncle, John Morse, had showed up. Like I said, his arrival was not all that unusual, but the fact that he had turned up without announcing himself, and that he turned up apparently wanting to spend the night, but he didn't bring anything with him, like he didn't have any luggage or anything like that. He just kind of turned up the way he was, so they thought that was a little weird. Now, apparently when he showed up, like, and this was like corroborated with Lizzie's testimony and with John Morse's testimony, neither of them had seen each other before the murders, which was not weird because, like I said, they kind of kept to themselves. Lizzie was kind of out. He was kind of out and about. And so she had actually not seen him on the particular day because he had left before she had got up. Now, another thing that happened, and their friend Alice Russell later testified to this fact, that the night before the murders, Lizzie had gone over to Alice Russell's house, who was her friend at the time, and she was apparently very agitated, very out of sorts, and she said to Alice Russell that, "I feel as if something were hanging over me, and I cannot throw it off." And then she said something to Alice to the effect of, she thought that her dad had enemies and that someone was going to do something to them. She specifically said that she was afraid to go to sleep because she thought that someone was going to burn the house down around them.
She's setting herself. She's setting it up.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like she's trying to set it up to like
to have alibis.
To have an alibi.
And she doesn't really quite know what she's doing. She's not an experienced criminal, so she's trying to plant seeds in other people, and she's thinking about poisoning her parents.
And she didn't get the poison because
she's
the
thinking about
druggist
burning
wouldn't
the
sell it to
house
her.
down. She's thinking about and then I'm thinking that she just blew and decided to fucking
that she's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do this.
Bam, and hatcheted her stepmom. And then she said, somebody came in here and did this.
Yeah,
that's what I've always thought. But
I kind of suspect as much as well. Like I said, I wasn't there, but it's like I kind of suspect, like, all of the shit, it's like, yeah, they didn't really find any physical evidence, but all of the shit that she apparently did beforehand seems a little sketchy.
Yeah.
If she was innocent. You know what I'm saying?
There was a lot of societal pressure on her. I mean, think about it. She's not going to get married.
Yeah.
Her family life is holding her back from being anything. She's running out of time. You know?
Yeah.
What is she going to do? Is she going to sit there and just languish in obscurity? You know what I mean? Under like the oppression of these fucking kind of retro parents.
Yeah.
You know
that are kind of like not letting her live the way she wants to live.
Yeah, right. That's the way I'm seeing it.
I kind of feel that way as well.
And I'm thinking she's like, these fuckers have got to go. to make me free.
Yeah, because she would get all the money.
Yeah, she'd get the money. And then in her mind, you know what I mean? She's imagining a life of travel and men and, you know what I mean?
Or women.
Or women.
Yeah,
she might have been a lesbo.
I think she was apparently into that.
Yeah, she might have been into that. So, you know what I mean? It might have been a situation like that.
I kind of suspect that was because, like I said, that would give her a motive. I can see how, I mean, she was 32 years old. Like I said, in that day, that would have been an old maid.
Yeah. But you at 32, you still got all those hormones and drives.
Young nowadays.
That's still young.
Yeah.
But she's living in a society that's telling her that that's now old.
And she's
not going to get married.
I feel like maybe if she had been allowed to live like in society, like if they had a house on the hill, if she was allowed to like go to like all the social functions and stuff like that, that other people of her, you know, social status or her wealth status would have gone to, then maybe she wouldn't have been so resentful. But I do feel like there was some resentment with her family because she felt like they were like, well, we're living in this kind of down market neighborhood, this down market house without all the amenities, and we're missing out on all of the stuff that our relatives and other people of our class are doing.
I mean,
and I feel like that kind of pissed her off.
I've heard the details of this case at least 5-6 times in my life, and I've always just come to the conclusion that she did it, and it had to do with the fact that her fucking family life was holding her back from being a person.
Yeah.
And she blew. She wanted out of that shit somehow.
Yeah.
That's the way I remember
and
it.
And you said,
now that you're fucking telling me the case again, I'm going, I was right.
It does seem to me that,
put myself in her shoes,
like I said, I don't think she initially intended to kill them in the horrific, gruesome way that she did kill them. I think she would have been happier poisoning them because it wasn't as... But I feel like because she couldn't buy the poison and maybe she was like frustrated because she was stymied, and so she's like, well, I'm going to do this like because she'd already decided, and so she just went ahead and went with whatever she had at hand.
I mean, to be honest, I don't even see her really as a bad person.
Well, she's clearly a bad person because she axed 2 people to death, but I can understand why she flipped out.
Here's the thing. I think she was actually a good person. I think her parents were fucking assholes, too. I think that was a contributing factor. It doesn't mean you should kill some people, but the society of the time is that she had no way out, so there was a bunch of fucking conflicts happening in her. You know what I mean? I don't imagine that you take any modern person of today and put them in that situation. You wouldn't have fucking tolerated that shit for fucking even half the amount of time she tolerated that shit for.
That's true. Like I said,
so you gotta look at it that way.
I can understand where she's coming from. Like I said, it's never excusable to like axe people to death. But that said, I can understand, particularly in that time period, particularly for women, because they had much less freedom, much less choices. Right. I can understand why a lot of poisonings and shit happened. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying.
We're not saying.
I'm just saying I understand it.
You can even put a good person in that situation back,
and they
would blow.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You'd go fucking nuts. I can see that. And that's what I think happened.
Yeah,
I think she kind of went fucking nuts.
Well, clearly,
because imagine you'd be fucking hopeless in that society.
Like I said, situation. I mean, she would have to wait. Well, she would have to wait for her father to die. Now, her father was 70. But she'd also have to wait for her stepmother to die because she was presuming, probably correctly, that when her father died, like her stepmother would get the bulk of the estate, which was substantial.
Which meant that the money would all shift away from her.
Right.
You know.
So I do feel like,
how old was the stepmom? Do you remember?
64.
So then you got another fucking 10, 20 years to wait.
Yeah.
So she's 60 by the time she's free.
Yeah.
And what kind of life does she have?
Yeah, I mean, she was...
Or 50-something.
Yeah, she was 32 when the
So she'd be like 52, 53. And in that society, 52, 53, I mean, you're over the hill.
Yeah.
As a single woman. You're never going to have a life.
Yeah.
So I'm not putting all this on her. I'm also putting this on the situation, the societal situation that people were under back then. I mean, it was a bad time. What they were under was actually a lot worse than guys in the fucking frontier and the Wild West.
Yeah.
If you put me back in the damn Victorian era, I wouldn't be in fucking Boston, man. I'd be out in fucking California.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In the field. doing what Tom motherfucking Ross does. You know what I'm talking about? I'd have my horse, which, yes, I can ride. I can even jump. I can ride Western and English.
That's true.
Okay.
His mom is
my mother's
actually
a fucking horse
trainer.
So I'd have my fucking horse. I'd have my fucking, a 32-30 fucking pistol and carbine. I'd fucking have my...
I feel like you would probably be perfectly happy
fucking
living
right,
like that.
man. Me and fucking all kinds of Crustles and shit. You know what I mean?
A whole army of Crustles.
Oh yeah, fucking armies
That's
of
a new
Crustles.
shirt,
With
army
fucking,
of Crustles.
Yeah, I'd have. We'd be hunting down bone tomahawk style Indians and shit. You know what I mean? Or we'd fucking hanging out with Cherokee. Let's go raiding. We'll trade women. We'll do whatever. I couldn't live in a New England society.
Well, and like I said, particularly for a woman and a single woman.
I'm just not white enough. I'm not white enough to live in New England
because as restricted
1800s.
as men's lives were back then. I mean,
women's
lives were 10 times, 100 times more restrictive than that because there was so many things they could not do.
Right, and if I was fucking born a woman in that era, I would be a fucking hooker.
I think I would have been as well.
Yeah,
and like I said, I read a book a while back about...
They had a much better lifestyle.
About like some kind of famous courtesans like from England like back in the day. And I was reading that going, man, their life sounds so much better than like other women I read it from the same era. They were like society women. It's like, I think I would have just been a prostitute. I mean, it would have sucked...
Trying to become a madam.
Yeah, it would have sucked for a while because you'd have to like fuck a bunch of like gross dudes and that would have sucked. But if you could become a madam and like own your own place,
you had to own a parlor house,
and you became like kind of a fashionable, and you could have like all the artists and poets and like weirdos hang out at your place. Like that's kind of what the demi-monde as they called it in France.
In the Victorian era, United States, really the place to be was in a parlor.
Yeah.
Okay, because it was a world of fantasy. You had the best women, the most interesting people were in those fucking parlors. And it was kind of like a club scene. You go in, you party, you drink, you spread the money around, spreading the wealth around between these beautiful women, and really, that's where all the cool guys were.
Yeah. So, and like I said, when I read that...
It was, what do you call it? It was hedonistic.
Yeah.
It was a hedonistic, open style. That's the only place where you could really be normal.
It was like a more modern life. In the midst of like this really restrictive.
And we're not talking about saloons and brothels. That was fucking middle class. We're talking about parlors.
We're talking about like kind of upper class.
That's the upper class shit.
Yeah. Right. Because some of the, like I said, some of the courtesans I read about were some of the, like the wealthiest, like were wealthier than like a lot of business owners and stuff like that.
Octoroon girls and shit from the era in Louisiana. Those girls all had it made in those days.
Yeah.
Did they have fucking sanctity, religious sanctity and honor? No. But they had a different kind of honor.
Yeah.
Because...
And like I said, they had considerably more freedom.
And a lot of money.
And they had their own money. It's like everyone like kind of looked askance at them, but they had a shit ton of money, so they could get around a lot of those restrictions.
Plebes and normies looked askance at them.
Yeah.
But really, the fucking guys who ran the society fucking loved them. Governors.
Well, they were going to that shit.
That's where the money was coming from.
On the down low.
You're talking about governors and artists and writers and fucking guys.
Well, and in a way, that was kind of like kind of contributed to their power because they had dirt on everybody.
They had dirt and they had power and influence.
So you couldn't fuck with them because it's like if you fuck with them, they would spill all the dirt on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do feel like, and like I said, I've read several books to that effect. I was just kind of like, yeah, I think if I'd been born a woman back then, that would have sucked a lot. I would think I would be a hooker. It's like, that's terrible to say because I'm sure it wasn't great, but I'm sure it was like better than...
Well, you want to be a parlor girl. You want to be in a parlor. What they call them? They call them stars.
Like
stars.
Well, that's where the word star came from.
That's where the word star came from. Yeah. So you want to be a star.
Yeah. Like everybody knew who you were. You were super famous, and you had all the money you wanted, and you could have it in your own name. You could own your own shit.
Yeah, and then the whole concept of prostitution kind of fucking becomes iffy when you're a woman that has so much money and social power and so much status and star power that you could say yes or no to whoever you wanted.
That's what I mean. You could, once you got to a certain level, you could control your own destiny, which was not a luxury afforded to most women at the time.
No, you had to be a player to get some of that shit.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
All right. So, as I said earlier, now, on the day of the murders, and some of the statements that Lizzie gave to police, gave to other people, later gave at the inquest, were a little contradictory. Now, according to the autopsies, like I said, there was an hour and a half in between the time that Abby Borden was killed in the guest room and Andrew Borden was killed on the couch in the sitting room. So whoever did the murders would have had to kill Abby Borden and then hung around the house, apparently, for an hour and a half, and then killed Andrew when he came home. So it seemed a little, like I said, it's not impossible, but it seems a little implausible that someone would have broken into the house, killed Abby Borden, and then hid in the house. And keep in mind, Lizzie and Bridget were both at home, and somehow hid in the house undetected for an hour and a half, and then popped out, killed Andrew, and then got out of the house without anyone seeing him or her.
Yeah.
So, like I said, not impossible, but implausible.
Very unlikely.
But unlikely. Unlikely.
It leans more towards whoever killed these people belonged in that house.
Yeah, and like I said, police came to that pretty quickly. That it had to be, that it was probably someone in the house.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to say that was Lizzie. But
like I said, I suspect it probably was as well. Now, there was also the whole thing of, like, the note that apparently arrived at the house for Abby Borden in the morning that said, oh, your friend is sick, you need to go out and see them, because Lizzie had told everybody this note came, and then Abby Borden left the house. Now, obviously, Abby Borden had not left the house because she had gone upstairs at around 9:30 to put pillowcases on the bed in the guest room and had been killed very shortly thereafter, so she had obviously never left the house. They asked her, now the police did actually search the house for this note. Obviously, they did not find it. Lizzie said, oh, well, maybe I inadvertently burned it because I burn a lot of letters and stuff like that. The police even put out like a call to the public in later days and said, hey, if you're the person that wrote this supposed note to Abby Borden, please come forward and say what you know. And obviously no one ever did that. Now, that seems very fishy, although one writer did kind of make a good point about it. They're like, if Lizzie is guilty, which, like I said, I suspect that she might have been, it's like, why would she even fabricate the note when she could have just said easily, oh, Mrs. Borden went out. That's all she had to say. She didn't have to say, oh, there was a note that came to the house, which she probably knew. I mean, she wasn't dumb. So just like she knew that would have been followed up on. And it's like, hey, where'd this note go? And all this other kind of stuff. It just would have been much easier to say, oh, she went out. I don't know where she went. That would have been like the easiest thing to do. She didn't do that. So some writers that think that Lizzie didn't do it have pointed this out as saying, well, why didn't she just say, oh, she went out, and left it at that instead of coming up with this whole story about the note, which she knew would be followed up on. But, like I said, I'm not saying that makes her innocent. I'm just saying it seems like a weird detail. So there was, so apparently the weird thing about the murder was that Andrew Borden, when he came home, Bridget saw him when he came home, obviously, because he couldn't get into the house, like his key got stuck or the door was stuck or whatever. So he had to ring the doorbell, and Bridget had to open the door. So from the time that Bridget let him into the house and the time that Lizzie yelled for her upstairs and said that he was dead, that was only about a half an hour. So that doesn't seem like a big, huge time. It's not a lot of time to axe somebody to death. And then, because from the way the bodies were situated, here's the weird thing. From the way the bodies were situated, the person that did this had to have been covered in blood, pretty much.
Yeah.
So if Lizzie had done it, and like I said, I think that she did, if Lizzie had done it, she killed her stepmother, then either changed dresses or hung out for an hour and a half in a bloody dress with no one seeing her, then killed her father, and then within a half hour changed into another outfit without anyone noticing, and somehow hid the bloody dress where no one found it, because police did search the house and apparently did not find a bloody dress. So that's another thing that kind of makes me, that's really the only thing that makes me question.
That's the only exculpatory evidence.
It is. It just seems very strange.
She should have had blood spatter.
She should have had blood all over her. Now,
she must have had some way to get rid of the clothes that she was wearing.
Well, I'll get into that in a minute too.
And maybe she did it nude or something.
Now, some
like
people
that.
have speculated that she was naked, or that she was wearing a smock, or that she was wearing a dress over another dress.
Yeah.
But anything that has her, like, wearing clothing, because the police searched the house and didn't find any bloody clothing. However, it should be noted that during this time period, it's possible that because the police would have been reluctant to search through a lady's personal things, that maybe she had stowed it someplace and they didn't find it because they thought it was improper to look through her things.
True.
But I don't really know. But it's like I said, nobody ever found... And like I said, there have been several... and I think even the Elizabeth Montgomery TV movie, I think that was a plot point of that movie, that she had, like, taken off her clothes. But the thing is, this was the middle of the fucking day. This was like 11 o'clock in the morning. It's like... Would a proper Victorian woman really be running around, like, in the sitting room of her house? And, like, the windows were open. It was, like, summer. It was really hot, so the windows were all open. Or had just been cleaned. I don't think the shades were drawn or anything like that. Would she have really been running around the sitting room naked? Like, where neighbors and shit could see her?
Well...
And if somebody came in, it would be much easier to explain. It would be very hard to explain away running around your house naked.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, I think she did plan this.
Well, I'm sure she did. I'm sure
she did plant seeds about arson and enemies.
Like I said, though, I don't think she planned to axe them to death. I think she planned to poison them.
I think maybe when it got down to axing somebody to death, maybe she planned it.
Maybe.
Maybe she's like, well, I'm just gonna have to fucking do this the direct way. And I kind of think she didn't take her clothes off. I think maybe she put something on over them.
Yeah, some people speculate
like some kind of sacks.
Or like I said, that she had a dress over another dress.
And then she did it, and then she took that off and then threw it away somehow.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, like I said, I'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there was only like a half hour. So, if she did do it, she cleaned up pretty quick. And like I said, there was a big gap in between the two murders. So, maybe she changed clothes 2 times, or maybe she had a bloody dress and she put a dress on over the bloody dress and then took it off again. I'm not really entirely sure how she did it. Now, Bridget did go outside at some point shortly before Abby Borden was killed, because she had to go out to the barn to get water, in a pail and stuff like that to wash the windows. So she was out of the house for, probably she was out in the barn while Abby Borden was being killed. But like I said, when she came back to the house, everything seemed normal. And it was really weird because after Abby Borden was killed, she was dead up there in the room. So if Lizzie had done that, Lizzie was, like, in the house acting normal, like, because she was talking to Bridget and shit, like, hey, what, are you leaving the house today, or why don't you go down to that sale at the department store or whatever? And she was just, like, ironing and doing normal shit, and Bridget didn't really see anything strange about how she was acting, even though Abby was dead upstairs, and if she had done it, then she must have known that. So that was a little strange, too.
But someone acting according to a plan can do that.
Yeah, like I said, she might have been planning this for a very long time. So it might be, and she might have been of the type of personality that perhaps, and some people have said this about her, that she was very cold, very emotionless. Right. She didn't tend to get, like, really upset about anything. So maybe she'd been thinking about this for a long time and she did it, and then she was just kind of, like, going about her day. You know what I mean? But like I said, nobody ever found any trace of blood on her, on any of her stuff or anything like that. The only blood they found in the house was, like, at the actual scene where the bodies were. So now, because of, there was also the whole thing about the burglary, quote unquote, that had happened the year before. Now, what had happened, like I said, this house, there were 3 locks on the front door. There were locks between all the rooms because they were all connected. Now, apparently, this had been done because of the burglary that had taken place in 1891. Now, in June of 1891, Andrew had called the police and said that the house has been broken into. Now, his desk had been broken into and rummaged through. $100 was missing. His watch and the chain attached to it was also missing. There was a bunch of other little things, like some of Abby's jewelry and some streetcar tickets, which had been taken. Now, the police did an investigation at the time. However, they could not find any way that a burglar could have gotten into the house. Like I said, they couldn't find any sign of forced entry. They canvassed the neighborhood, but no one had apparently seen any stranger around the house or anything like that. And like I said, these houses are very close together and everyone kind of knew each other. The police captain later said that Borden had told him, quote, "I'm afraid the police will not be able to find the real thief." Some people have speculated that Andrew Borden might have known that Lizzie was, as some have claimed, a kleptomaniac, and that she had done the robbery herself for whatever reason. And there is some after the murders and after she moved away and stuff like that, she did actually have some stealing later on. So, so there has been some speculation that she had done. Now, I don't know if she was planning that far ahead, because this was like more than a year before the murders. I don't know if she was planning that far ahead to plant the seeds of like someone's breaking into the house. Because apparently they had also had trouble with neighborhood boys breaking into their barn, because I think that Lizzie kept like pigeons out there, like she had built like a little hutch for them or something like that. And I think that neighborhood boys were breaking into the house, or they said that they were breaking into the house or into the barn to like shoot at the pigeons, because apparently that was something boys did back then. So there was, whether it was true or not, whether Lizzie was a kleptomaniac and she had done an inside job or not, there was a perception by Andrew Borden that he felt like, kind of inundated by maybe people are going to break in the house or something like that. So I don't know if he was just paranoid, or because it seems like if he knew that it was Lizzie, then he wouldn't have gone to all that trouble to like put all these locks on the outside doors of the house. Because one thing that people, like a lot of documentaries said, he had all these locks on the interior doors of the house too, but he kept the key in plain sight, almost like he was trying to send a message to Lizzie, like, hey, I know where that key is, so if I see that it's gone, I know that you're up to some shit. But then he had like all those locks on the front door too, like he was afraid that someone from outside was going to come in. So I'm not really sure how much that, but there was a break-in, whether it was Lizzie or not. They could, like I said, they couldn't find any forced entry. But a bunch of shit was stolen and was apparently never recovered. So whether Lizzie took it or not, I don't know. Or whether it was another. That's what I mean. It's like I said, this was more than a year before the murders. So if she was planning on killing them, she was planning the shit for a long time to like, and she was kind of like a criminal genius to like set up all this fucking shit that far ahead, like in advance. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know if I buy it or not. I don't know. It's not impossible. Like, people have done that kind of shit.
Maybe maybe she wasn't planning on killing anybody by that period, but maybe setting up a robbery was a way to put money in her pocket.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what I mean?
And she could, like, do something with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she'd say, well, I didn't do that. Somebody else did it. So she
might. Yeah, it does seem like a lot of her actions, like I said, it's hard to say in hindsight because we know that the murders happened. So it's like anything that she did before that is going to seem suspicious. But it does seem suspicious that there was a robbery a year before that that appeared was an inside job, although maybe it's possible that it wasn't. And it also that she said shit about, like, she said shit to her friend the night before about, he's got, like, my dad's got enemies and I'm afraid that someone's going to, like, break in. And
could be that she's just feeling out her powers.
True.
She got away with the robbery. Okay, and made some money on it. People believe that. So maybe they'll believe it if I kill these people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a trial run.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. I mean, it could be. It does seem very strange that... I mean, it wasn't the greatest neighborhood, but... I don't know. It just seems really weird. And it seems
the whole thing about my dad has enemies, they're going to rob us, and then it gets robbed.
Yeah, that seems a little strange.
That sounds fucking hokey to me.
Yeah. So, on the afternoon of the murder, the police were asking Lizzie if there were any hatchets in the house. So she tells Bridget, the maid, she says, go show them where the hatchets are, because every household had a hatchet or several, because they were a very useful tool. So they found 4 hatchets in the basement. One had dried blood and hair on it. However, this was later discovered to be from a cow. And like I said, it was dried blood. It was very old. One of the other hatchets was rusted, so they knew that that wasn't it. 2 of the other hatchets were covered with dust. However, one of these did not have a handle and was covered with ashes. Now, there wasn't any blood on it that anyone could see. However, because the investigators thought that the handle had been recently broken off, this was taken into evidence and presumed to be the murder weapon.
Now, who killed a fucking cow with a hatchet?
Who knows? It might not have been a cow. It might have been like a side of meat that they were cutting up that
maybe.
still had fur on it. Maybe.
See, this whole thing here is kind of odd. If a random person breaks in and kills 2 people with a hatchet, and the hatchet isn't left at the scene, then that means that person carried a hatchet around with them.
Yeah.
I just think that's unlikely. It's more likely they break into a house, they find a hatchet in the house.
Well, everyone had a hatchet back then. That was like the fucking
it's like
Axeman in New Orleans, man,
right.
because he didn't even bring an axe because everybody had one. He just broke in and took your axe.
Right.
Killed you with it. Smashed people and then just left it in your fucking yard.
And then left the hatchet outside.
Yeah.
And that's usually what happens.
Yeah,
but there was
no weapon of opportunity.
Found. That tells me that leans more towards Lizzie.
That's what I mean. It's like
hatchet. She killed him with the hatchet. She disposed of the hatchet.
I mean, she didn't dispose of it. She left it with the other hatchets, but they thought that it looked like the handle had been broken off, and it's possible that, and they didn't find any blood on that one hatchet that was broken, but she could have washed it and then rubbed it in the ashes to make it look like.
I kind of think that wasn't the hatchet.
It might not have been.
I kind of think that she killed him with another hatchet.
And then got rid
of that hatchet.
Yeah.
And then they went to where the hatchets were and found suspect hatchets, and then they kind of tried to...
You guys have so many hatchets.
Oh, man, one of these hatchets must be the murder weapon. Fuck no.
Yeah, not necessarily. She might have just...
She got rid of the damn
She
murder.
might have bought a new hatchet for the...
Right.
Or borrowed one from someone else, or got something from somewhere else. Like I said, it was, Yeah, so she might have got rid of it some other place and they never found it.
Yeah, I think she got rid of the damn hatchet.
Although, like I said, it's possible that she had taken that particular hatchet, broken the handle off, and then, cleaned it and rubbed it in ashes. But she didn't have, like I said, she didn't have a lot of time. There was only, between the time that Andrew Borden was killed and the time that she called up to Bridget that, hey, Andrew's dead, that was only half an hour. So it doesn't really seem like enough time because, like I said, there was no running water in the house. She would have had to go out to the barn to where the spigot was to clean the axe and then bring it back in the house, go to the, I've heard basement or room behind the fireplace, wherever it was. So she would have had to go back there, clean it, rub it in ashes, and then leave it where it would be found.
But if you've been planning to commit this murder for a while, all right, you already have a way to get rid of that hatchet.
Yeah, I would think that you would plan this shit out ahead of time.
There might have been a deep hole underneath the house somewhere to where you could take the hatchet and throw it in there and then just cover it up, and they just didn't find it.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe
there's
they never
a place in
found it.
between the walls where you could throw it. They'd never find it. It was something like that.
Because it seems better to just throw it somewhere where no one would ever
she put it somewhere where no one
would
would find it.
I mean, and then she probably thought, oh well, we have a bunch of hatchets. I'll just show them those hatchets. And those are all old.
She'd already planned all that. I mean, there could have been,
like I said, she wasn't a dummy.
Yeah, there could have been a place where you could throw the hatchet behind a wall, between the 2 walls in the house. And then in those days, there were no metal detectors, and they weren't going to fucking tear shit apart looking for the damn hatchet. She found a little cubby hole where you could put it. And they never found it.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
It could have been. So,
it's more likely than, well, I broke the handle. Breaking a fucking hatchet handle is hard.
Yeah.
To do.
And like I said, she would have had to take it out to the barn to clean it because that's where the only running water was. And then she would have had to bring it back to the house and rubbed it in ashes.
And you're not going to break a hatchet handle on people. No. It's just not going to happen. You know what I mean?
I mean, this could be a...
You can go back to the fucking Roman era for thousands of years. Motherfuckers were killing other motherfuckers with hatchets and axe-like implements that had wooden handles. And they would fucking last whole battles.
Yeah,
okay?
It's like just bashing someone in the face.
Just bashing a few unarmored people in the face with a damn hatchet is not going to break it.
Yeah.
Okay? Even a store-bought hatchet made for chopping wood is strong enough
because
to cut through mini heads.
That's what I mean. Because a hatchet is made for cutting through firewood. And a firewood is substantially harder than a human face.
Exactly. See, with my background, fucking in soldierly shit, and 101st Airborne stuff, infantry, fucking, I was born for anti-personnel missions, okay, and to understand how Melee weapons work, even medieval weapons. Okay, I know that a store-bought hatchet of the 1800s has no problem killing many people without breaking.
Yeah.
You know, it just will.
So, like I said, I'm not saying that Lizzie didn't do it. We're just saying that maybe that wasn't the murder weapon.
Yeah.
That maybe they didn't.
Whatever she showed them was not the weapon.
Right.
She got rid of the weapon.
That maybe she got rid of it.
Yeah. Hell yeah. She had a plan.
Yeah. Well, like I said, if she was planning this, then if she actually did do that robbery like a year before, then she was planning this like way ahead of time, like setting up that someone. Well, I don't think. Well,
maybe she wasn't necessarily planning on killing her parents at that point, but what she did was is she decided she was going to steal some shit from her parents. Maybe when she got away with that, her confidence went up.
I suspect that she initially only planned to kill her stepmother.
Yeah, and then the father had to...
Because, like I said, her dad was 70. He was already pretty old. It's like she didn't really like her stepmother, apparently. So I feel like she was probably just going to kill the stepmother, and then she was going to, like, inherit... Because she was afraid that, like, Abby was going to inherit all the shit, like, after he died. So I don't think that she was going... Maybe she didn't plan to kill her dad necessarily, but she thought, well, once I've killed Abby, she's like, well, now I have to kill him too, because he's going to find out, and, you know.
She might have killed him out of panic.
That's what I'm saying, because he might suspect her.
Yeah, because you have to kind of, like, consider the human factor.
Yeah.
She may have fucking got scared after she killed her fucking stepmom.
Yeah.
And then said, he's going to figure it out. I got to fucking kill his ass, too.
That's kind of what I'm suspecting. Look at Pookie back there. Like, she's, like, right behind your head. Yeah. she's, like, looking over her shoulder. Look at you. Hi, sweetie. She's been running around outside all night.
She's asked me to let her back out, is what she's doing. She's like, Daddy, let me back out.
Not until later. You can go out a little bit later.
Yeah.
You'll be all right. She likes to go out on the back porch and roll around in the dirt. And get
Most
dirty.
of this amazing shit you see in these fucking cases is actually mundane.
Yeah.
It's just that, people that want to make cool television programs have come in and kind of ramped it up and brought shit. It's just, all you got to do is just look at fucking Ancient Aliens. The program Ancient Aliens.
They made a whole show out of nothing.
They'll make a show out of nothing.
It's a talent.
Yeah. Lizzie killed him. Lizzie killed him because she was under a lot of stress. She may have killed the dad on the spur of the moment, but she did plan to kill the stepmom, probably.
I think so too. I think the main intention was to kill the stepmom, and then just like to get the estate like after her father died. And because like I said, I don't think that she was particularly I don't think there was that much animosity between her and her dad, other than there may have been some resentment, like that he was kind of like cramping her style and shit like that. But I don't think, her and her dad were fairly close, according to most people, so I don't think she would have, oh my goodness.
Yeah, she's pushing the camera.
Look at her. She's not dumb. But I don't think she would have killed him unless she had to. I could be wrong about that. Maybe she hated him too. I don't really know.
It was a bad situation.
But yeah, so another thing that was a little... So Lizzie's story was that on the morning of the murder, she had been in the barn for 20 or 30 minutes looking for iron for sinkers for a fishing trip that she was going to in a town called Marion. She was actually going to visit some family members in a few weeks. And she was like really into fishing. Yeah. So she said that she had gone out to the barn to get iron to make fishing sinkers. Now, the police thought this was unlikely because they searched the barn and found that the dust in there was undisturbed, which suggested that no one had been in there. Also, they said, look, it was like over 100 degrees outside, and the barn was like really, really hot and really, really stifling, and they couldn't believe that anyone would be out there for 20 to 30 minutes, like voluntarily, just because it was like so fucking horrible. Now, some people that believe that someone else did it, have pointed out that a couple of workmen said that they had been in the barn in a day or two prior to the murder, and also no evidence of their presence was seen in the barn either. So they're kind of trying to suggest that maybe Lizzie had been in there and like there was no evidence because other people had been in there and there wasn't any evidence of them either, blah, blah, blah. So I don't really know. But like I said, her story like kind of changed, so that seemed kind of fishy. She also said that when she was coming back from the barn, initially she said that she was outside the house and she heard what sounded like her father, quote unquote, groaning. But in another version of the story, she said she heard a scraping noise like coming from inside the house, which like alerted her that something bad was going on inside the house. So she went inside because she had been out in the barn. So she claimed that she had been outside conveniently for the 20 to 30 minutes in which Andrew Borden had been killed, which again seems a little too convenient. Now, there was another inconsistency. Now, during the inquest and statement she had given before the inquest, because as we will note when we talk about the trial, she actually did not testify at the trial. However, there was an inquest before that, which was kind of like a trial, where they had the prosecution and defense and everything like that. She actually said at this inquest, there were two different versions of the story. She said that when Andrew Borden got home, that she had come down and she had either seen him take his shoes off, or because he didn't feel well and was going to lay down on the couch for a nap, that she had helped him out of his shoes and into his slippers. However, when his body was found, he had his regular street shoes on. He didn't have slippers on. So that was another inconsistency. So when one of the deputy marshals, whose name was John Fleet, questioned Lizzie, he asked her initially, who do you think might have committed these murders? Like, who do you think wanted your father dead? Now, she said that there was this man who she didn't know what his name was, and it's like, oh, him and my dad like had this argument a couple weeks before, but I can't think of anyone else. However, later on, she actually pointed the finger at her uncle, Hiram C. Harrington. Now, she later said, this is the only person that I could think of that would want Andrew Borden dead. However, she only said this after Hiram C. Harrington went on record as saying, I don't think he came right out and said that Lizzie had done it, but he thought it was someone in the house and implied that he thought it was probably Lizzie. So it seemed like it was her getting back at him for like pointing the finger at maybe he was the one that did it. They did ask her if either John Morse, the uncle who was staying with them, or Bridget, the maid, who was the only other person in the house at the time, could have killed Andrew Borden. She said that neither of them could have. It does seem like there are some theories that say that John Morse could have done it, but it seems unlikely because he left the house very early in the morning, probably more than an hour before Abby was killed. He left before 8 in the morning, and several people saw him. He was only going a mile away, like to relatives' houses, but several people saw him on streetcars and like at various places in there. So they're imagining that probably he didn't do it. Another thing that people thought was suspicious was that when Fleet had questioned her, he specifically asked, well, who do you think could have killed your father and mother? She specifically stepped up and said, she's not my mother, she's my stepmother. My mother died when I was a child. So they thought that was a little fishy. So August 5th, which was a couple of days after the murder, investigation continues. Stories started appearing in the newspaper. Of course, this is a very big deal. The whole town is like flipping out because this is a very prominent family. So this was the same day that Eli Bentz, the guy from the drugstore, came forward and talked about the prussic acid and stuff like that. Now, August 6th was the day of Abby and Andrew's funeral. The service was conducted by two reverends, Reverend Buck and Reverend Judd, who were actually friends of Lizzie. She worked for them. Like I said, she was, very high up in that church. And they were both her constant defenders. They appeared with her in court several times. Weirdly, though, they have the funeral, but they're going to bury the bodies, and the police came and said, yeah, you can't bury them because we're going to do another autopsy. So they took the heads off the bodies.
Damn.
They took all the skin off.
What?
And they made plaster casts of their skulls.
How does that help with this?
I'm not really sure.
Somebody trying to make some money.
So apparently, poor Andrew Borden's head was not returned to the coffin. I think it was buried separately later on, or later was thrown in the coffin. I'm not really sure. On this same day, a newspaper ad appeared, which had been paid for by Lizzie and her older sister Emma, offering a $5,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person who had murdered their parents. So there you go. Now, August 7th. This was a Sunday morning. Lizzie's friend Alice Russell came forward and told the police on Sunday morning, I saw Lizzie burning a dress in the kitchen stove. Now, the weird thing about this was that when Lizzie was burning this dress, not only was Alice in the kitchen, but her sister Emma was also in the kitchen. She was doing the dishes because the maid, Bridget, had fucked off. She's like, she quit. So it was Friday or Saturday, like prior to this, like a couple days after the murders, she got all her shit and got out. So Emma was in there doing housework, Alice, and for some reason, like Lizzie is in there burning a dress. So Alice says to her, she's like, that looks a little suspicious. Like, if I were you, I wouldn't let anyone seeing you doing that. At which point Lizzie said, oh, this is an old dress and it had paint on it, so I'm getting rid of it because it's not of any use to me anymore. So...
They had trash collection back then.
That seemed a little weird. Now, I will say that it's like, okay, now if Lizzie had done it, which like I said, I suspect that she did, it seems weird that, one, she didn't get rid of the dress that she wore before this, because this was 4 days after the murder. Why didn't she get rid of it when no one was looking at her? Because not only was her sister in the kitchen, her friend was in the kitchen while she was burning the stove, but there was also a cop outside the house who had been stationed to, watch the house. He was supposed to watch them and, keep all the onlookers, away from running around in the house on the property. So it seemed weird if she was going to get rid of the house, unless she was, trying to do, a hide in plain sight type of thing. Maybe that's what she was going for. I'm not really sure. But... neither her sister nor the friend said that they saw any blood on the dress. They just said that she was burning it in the stove, and that seemed a little strange. Now, this was the testimony of Alice Russell, who said that she'd seen her burning the dress in the stove, that actually led to Lizzie Borden being arrested and charged with the murders. Prior to this, like I said, they had kind of suspected that she was in it, but there wasn't a lot of evidence for it. But when Alice Russell came forward and said, look, I saw her burning a dress 4 days after the murders, and that seemed a little suspicious to me, that seemed like the main thing that they were getting. Because, like I said, they had found no bloody dress during the search of the house. They had found no... Like I said, so she might have been wearing one, but I don't know where the dress was in the 4 days and why she didn't get rid of it before that, if indeed it was a bloody dress. Where was it?
The cops were right to arrest her after that.
Yeah.
Because how many times have you burned a dress?
Never.
Right. You just throw that shit away.
I've thrown some away, sure.
Yeah.
Not because they had blood on them.
Right. 4 days after that? Yeah.
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 Like I said, it seemed a little fishy. But like I said, in her defense... You'd think that if she'd really done it, she would have waited until she was alone to do that shit, so no one would have seen it to report to the cops. But, like I said, maybe she was doing some, reverse psychology shit.
Right. Well, they'll never suspect. I'm going to do it right in front of them.
I'm going to do it right in front of them. It's like, that won't be suspicious. So
I don't need this anymore.
I got paint on this shit.
Yeah. Or blood. Those little red specks of paint.
I was painting a fence, and I just got So this was at this point that they arrested her for it. So, as I said, there was a lot of testimony at the inquest, and the inquest was kind of unusual in jurisprudence history because it was almost like a trial, even though there was no jury present. There was the prosecution, the defense, and everything, which was very strange. But that's kind of how they did it. When the trial actually commenced, because... The defense team was kind of hoping that at the inquest, enough evidence would come out that Lizzie wouldn't get charged and the whole thing would blow over. But that's kind of not how it happened. Particularly the testimony by Alice Russell, saying about the burning of the dress and everything like that. So the judge kind of thought that there was enough evidence to go to trial for the murders. Now, as I said before, or I can't remember if I said it before, but Lizzie was actually charged with, this is very weird, but she was charged with 3 murders. She was charged with the murder of Abby Borden, the murder of Andrew Borden, and the murder of both of them.
What?
That was so I don't know why they did. That seemed like a very...
murder and 2 single murders.
Yeah,
that's 3 murders.
So that was 3 charges of murder.
Right.
Which, as far as I know, I don't know if that's been done before, but that was a very unusual... So a lot of people have commented on it. So she didn't actually go to the trial because the judge thought that she was probably guilty, quote unquote. She testified at length at the inquest or the hearing or whatever. However, when the trial came along, she did not testify at all. Pretty much all she said was to stand up and say, "I'm innocent. I will let my counsel speak for me." That's all she said at the trial. Now, evidently at the trial, which lasted 14 days, which was a very long time for that time period. And like I said, it was a huge deal, like in the media and everything, like every day, like they were coming out with, it was like, you know, reporters from like all over the fucking country, like sitting in on this shit. But apparently on the advice of her lawyers, she had actually really good lawyers. She had the family lawyer, and she had like another one that was, you know, the family, because she had a lot of money so they could pay for it. So it was kind of like they advised her to wear black, tasteful, as though she was in mourning. Also, she acted kind of like you would expect, you know, kind of in a 32-year-old spinster of society woman to act at a trial. There was one point in the trial where one of the attorneys was like trying to be dramatic, and he like threw one of the dress that she gave to the police, which was probably not the dress that she had committed the murders in, if indeed she committed them, because it was silk, and the dress that she had been wearing was made of corduroy. But he threw it on the table, and he had the skulls of Abby and Andrew Borden,
Damn.
which were to be brought into evidence later, but he had like tissue paper over them. So when he threw the dress, it like blew the tissue paper off, so the skulls were visible. And Lizzie, sorry, the kitty's like fucking with the camera.
Stop fucking with the camera. She's loving on the camera.
I know. She's like, so pay attention to me.
Yes.
Pay attention to me. Look what she's doing. Just imagine Pookie over there.
Leave the
like
tripod alone. Okay.
She loves it. But yeah, so the tissue paper blew off the skulls, and Lizzie, perhaps in an act of theatricality, perhaps it was natural, I don't really know, but she supposedly fainted dead away. Now this was, like I said, this might have been on the advice of her lawyers, because they did say, hey, show up in court, like be very demure, like wear your mourning clothes, act like a normal person.
I think it was all fake.
And, you know, it's like kind of like, you know, swoon at certain times, because that's what ladies were supposed to do when something, you know, terrible or shocking happened. You were supposed, I just can't deal with it, you know what I mean? So she did that kind of shit. Now, as I said, the trial lasted 14 days. The jury deliberated for less than an hour and came back with a verdict of not guilty. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting thing was that, like I said, she had a lot of supporters. All the people at the church that she worked for, the reverends and everything like that, they were just convinced that she could not have done it. There was just no way. A lot of, you know, women's groups, like women's rights groups, like took up her cause. A lot of women's rights groups kind of used her case to argue for certain things that they were arguing for, like because at that time women were not allowed to serve on juries, so and her jury was indeed all men. So they thought that it would be more fair if she had women on the jury, because jury of her peers and whatever. So they kind of used that in their causes. So there was like a lot of political machinations going on behind the scenes. It should be noted too that, just as in modern times, the media, like when there wasn't any like compelling news about the story, you know, about the case, they would make up some shit. And in case, one newspaper, I can't remember which one it was, but they pretty much made up, I believe it was 12 different witnesses. They made up their names, like where they were from and everything, like had been in the neighborhood, like when the murders occurred. It's like, oh, some of them said that they had seen, you know, Lizzie through the windows. It's like, oh, one of them like overheard Lizzie like arguing with her father about her being pregnant by some boyfriend, and like and he was like, you know, I'll cut you out of the will or some other kind of shit. Fake news. So there was all kind of that shit going on. Yeah. And then there were other stories about like other people that had taken. There was like a wild man that was running around, and like somebody saw like some dude sitting on a wall like with a bloody hatchet waving it at people and shit like that. Yeah, but there was all kind of that shit.
They had newspapers they had to sell.
That's what I mean. So like I said, if anybody thinks that like nowadays it's like
fake news,
that people just make shit up. In a way, it was like from everything I've read, it was way worse back then, because they had like no compunctions whatsoever about just pulling shit right out of their ass, just like making up a fictional story, just printing it, just because they were trying to sell newspapers.
You couldn't really hold them accountable, so they just did it.
That's what I mean. It's like there was nothing you could do about it, really.
Freedom of the press in the United States, which meant you could lie.
Yeah, which they did. And apparently, like I said, in this case, at least one newspaper straight up invented about 12 witnesses.
Right.
Like I said, gave them names, like realistic sounding addresses, everything that were conveniently in other cities.
Yeah.
So like people couldn't check.
And it's funny how you have network news stations today trying to shut down YouTubers because they're lying. That's what they're saying. That shit was all fake news. It didn't matter. It didn't matter.
Well, like I said, I don't even think back then they had much of a concept of. They were just trying to sell papers.
Yeah, trying to sell papers.
I think it's worse back then because
they're trying to get hits.
Because I don't think they had any concept of, well, that's not really... At least nowadays, if you print something that's not true, like, a lot of people will come out and be like, hey, bro, what the fuck? But it's like, back then, I don't really think anybody cared about that kind of shit. Because that was just, like, what people did. You just published stuff.
It was let the buyer beware back then.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So...
I think they were hip to it, though.
Well, I would hope so.
I think a lot of them were hip to it.
But there were a lot of, like, legends that came about because of Lizzie Borden. So that, like I said, that's why it's hard to kind of come to a conclusion about a case that happened so long ago because you don't even know, like, even if you read, like, newspapers at the time, you don't know how much of that shit is true.
I look at damn airship stories from those days.
Yeah.
And it's obvious that they were written in a way to where the audience was supposed to be in on it.
Yeah.
And that they knew that airship stories were fake.
Well, yeah.
At least a lot of them.
And we talked about that before. But, like, I feel like like I said, the context was different. And I think there was a certain genre of stories back then that were...
supposed to be
like
fake.
Found footage of like what we call nowadays.
Yeah.
That were supposed to be like, oh, it's real, but everybody like knew that it wasn't real.
Think of a world that didn't really have entertainment. You had to get entertainment somehow. So the newspapers were delivering a form of
These
entertainment.
kids were pushing hoops through the street with a stick.
Yeah.
That's the entertainment that they had.
Right.
It was that kind of shit. So, as I said, it took less than an hour for the jury to exonerate Lizzie Borden. She was found not guilty. Not enough evidence to convict her. Now, Lizzie and Emma, her older sister, ended up receiving the bulk of their father's estate, which was, in those days' money, was $300,000. In today's money, was well over $8 million.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. So, because like I said, now the stepmother would have got it next, but she was dead too. So they ended up getting.
So it kind of falls into the old meme of or the old fucking story of getting the inheritance. And when you're talking about the 1800s in the United States, a lot of motherfuckers were killed over that damn inheritance.
That's why I feel like it's probably
and
Lizzie
this
did
seems like it's one of those cases.
I think so too, because apparently there had been a lot of resentment because they had the money, the family had the money, but they weren't living in the way that other wealthy people at the time were living.
Even Walt Disney knew about this back in the 1800s. All you gotta do is just go to the goddamn haunted mansion. And the theme behind the haunted mansion is about women killing husbands for the inheritance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like that was probably the case.
And that was just the way what they did back then.
So, so Lizzie and Emma got over $8 million. About 5 weeks after the trial. Now, about 5 weeks after the trial ended and Lizzie was found innocent, or found not guilty, rather. Lizzie actually ended up later changing her name slightly to Lisbeth A. Borden. It should be noted that she was not born Elizabeth. She was actually christened Lizzie, so that was her name. She wasn't named Elizabeth, and that was a nickname. She was actually named Lizzie. But she changed her name to Lisbeth Borden later on. 5 weeks after the trial, she and Emma bought a house, 13 rooms. It was a stone mansion at 306 French Street in Fall River. Now, people have speculated, it's like, why would Lizzie live in Fall River? Because so many people, it's weird because there was a lot of people that supported her during the trial and thought she was innocent. However, after she was acquitted and she decided to stay in Fall River, Massachusetts, she was essentially ostracized. She would go to church and everyone would move the pews, so there'd be like this big gap around her.
Yeah,
she couldn't really go out without people, like just moving away from her. So she was like a pariah.
She had cooties.
Yeah. Essentially. She had murderer cooties.
Yeah.
Now, but this house that they bought in Fall River, finally, they used their daddy's money to buy a house on the hill, the fashionable neighborhood where they had always wanted to live. The house is called, Lizzie decided to call the house Maplecroft. And she had that carved into the front step of the front house. That house is still there. There are still pictures of it. It doesn't look that great outside. It's actually got 8 bedrooms. It's less than 4,000 square feet, which is very small for a mansion, which is what they call it. But the inside of it is fucking gorgeous. It recently sold on the open market. I believe it sold for about $700,000. But like I said, the outside doesn't look all that great. It's not a mansion by today's standards, but the inside is really beautiful. It looks like shit from back then. Like, it looks like it's been completely done out the way it would have looked back in the day.
Wooden floors, and they had the runners and everything.
It's really beautiful. And it's like all done out. It looks like a museum inside. But apparently, as far as I know, like last I heard, it had been sold. It was actually on the market for $800,000, but I think they had to drop the price because there wasn't a lot of... I mean, no one was murdered in the house, as far as I know, but Lizzie had lived there, like, in the last part of her life. And you would think that somebody would pay a lot for that kind of, like, historical notoriety, but apparently not, so they had to drop it $100,000. But somebody bought it recently. Now, interestingly, like I said, shortly after that, her and Emma lived in this house. In 1897, now, as I was saying before about this robbery, this mysterious robbery that happened at the Borden house in 1891, in 1897, 5 years after the murders, Lizzie was charged with the theft of 2 paintings that she had stolen from the Tilden Thurber store in Fall River. She had apparently stolen these paintings from this store and then given them as gifts to other people.
She sounds like a sociopath.
Yeah, well, some people have speculated that she was maybe a kleptomaniac at the very least.
Yeah, but that's part of sociopathy. Sociopathy. Yeah. I'm drunk. I can't.
He can't articulate.
I can't articulate when I'm drunk.
She got caught because one of the paintings that she gave as a gift to somebody else, like, I guess the frame broke or something, and the woman brought it back to the same store, like, to have the frame fixed, and they were like, hey, this was stolen from our store a while back. So then they remembered. And so she wasn't charged with it. Apparently, like, she paid off everybody, like it was settled like outside of the courts or whatever. But so that's like another kind of evidence that she was not exactly like the upstanding citizen that everyone believed. Now, in 1904, Lizzie apparently met this actress named Nance O'Neill. Now, for the next 2 years after that, Lizzie and Nance were together pretty much all the time. And Nance was a very common fixture at Maplecroft, the house that she shared with Emma. And at one point, I believe she gave like a week-long house party for this woman. Now, Nance O'Neill apparently became, even when like motion pictures started, like silent movies started becoming popular, she was apparently became quite popular in that, mostly in like tragic roles. I found like tons of pictures of her, so she was apparently quite famous. So she has this big party for them. There was rumors that her and Nance were romantically involved. I don't know if that's true or not. But she did seem to have like an obsession with her. She often went to other cities to see her in stage performances and various other things. Now, apparently it was this that caused a rift between Lizzie and her sister Emma, who apparently couldn't quite fucking take it anymore. So Emma moved to Fairhaven, and apparently her and Lizzie never spoke ever again, even though they had been very close after the murder. And Emma had apparently supported Lizzie all during the trial, and, you know, like I said, they had bought a house together, like, after the trial and stuff like that. So I don't know if Emma thought that Lizzie was not guilty, or if they had conspired together on the murder, which may have been possible, although, like I said, Emma was out of town when the murder occurred. But Emma apparently did not believe that Lizzie had done the murder, or, like I said, they were working together, so they were actually kind of together. But this whole thing with the actress was apparently the last straw, so Emma fucked off, she moved somewhere else, and they never spoke again. Emma she stayed with Reverend Buck for a while, who had been another one of Lizzie's supporters, and then in 1915 she moved to New Hampshire. Lizzie ended up dying in 1927 at the age of 67. She had gallbladder surgery and then had like a lot of illnesses after that. Her sister Emma, mysteriously, died only a little more than a week later. I've heard that she died either from falling down the stairs at her house or because she had nephritis. Now, the two of them were buried together in the family plot, so they were buried They were buried, like, right where the parents were buried, their sister and everything like that. So, Andrew Borden, who apparently still didn't have a head, and everything like that. So, all of the money that was left when they died, Lizzie ended up leaving $30,000 in those days' money to the Animal Rescue League of Fall River because she was apparently a big animal lover. This is kind of contradictory to a lot of legends that circulated about her later that said that she had once decapitated a kitten in the cellar of the old house, like it was Andrew Borden's kitten or something like that. I kind of feel like
unlikely.
I kind of feel like that's probably unlikely.
Yeah.
And everyone that knew her in later life said that she fucking loved animals and she would never. She had horses, like she built, boxes for the squirrels and stuff like that. It's like she never would have done such a thing. I don't know where that legend came from. But you know what I mean. So she gave a large bulk of the estate when she died to the Animal Rescue League. She also left $500 in those days' money for the care of her father's grave. The remainder of it was left to friends, family, and servants. Emma also left a substantial sum to both the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. Now, Bridget Sullivan, the maid who some people have suspected may have played a part in the murder, in the sense that maybe there has been some speculation that Lizzie and Bridget were having an affair, or that Bridget knew that Lizzie had committed the murders and somehow like covered up for her. But there were because the thing about it is that when Abby Borden was killed, she was killed much earlier than Andrew Borden. When she was axed in the upper floor, when she hit the floor, this was a 200-pound woman. So when she hit the floor, you'd think that Bridget, the maid, the only other person in the house, would have heard something and gone up there to investigate. So some people have speculated that Bridget may have known what was going on and covered up for Lizzie later on. I don't know if that's true or not.
I say no.
However, yeah, so it's like a lot of people have said too, it's like, oh, she got this big payoff and she went to Ireland, and all that other kind of stuff. But the evidence shows that was not the case. The evidence shows that she actually ended up going to Butte, Montana, and worked for a family there. She did not have a ton of money. She did not go back to Ireland or anything like that. So I don't think that she knew what was going on or anything.
I think Lizzie ran up on her stepmom while she was making the bed or something. She was kind of in a lower position and went up and whacked her right in the back of the head, started beating her to death. She didn't have very far to fall. I don't think it made much noise. This is all, you know what I mean? This is all people trying to be Sherlock Holmes, trying to, piece together a crime scene. It's difficult to predict how people react to certain things, It's very difficult to know how, where someone was at a certain time and how the damn attack went down. I think Lizzie's stepmom was up by the side of the bed, maybe making the bed, and then Lizzie ran up, maybe with some kind of a sheet over her or something, or in some kind of fucking clothing to protect her main clothing, or maybe like a dress that she burned later, something like that, and threatened her stepmom with a hatchet, and her stepmom cringed, and then she just started wailing on her.
Yeah.
I don't think it made that much noise.
I honestly think she snuck up on her because, I think, as far as I remember, all of the wounds were in the back of her head.
Yeah, so which means she snuck up on her.
Yeah.
So it probably didn't make much noise, and it probably didn't take very long, and then she killed her stepmom, and then she's sitting there going, "Oh shit, I'm gonna get caught." Dad comes in. He goes, "Where's your mom? Hey, where's your stepmom?" Well, I don't know. She went out.
She got a message.
And then he's talking to her. He goes up and falls asleep on that damn couch. She starts thinking about it. She's like, I can't hide this body.
Yeah.
I'm in big fucking shit. How am I going to get out of this? Well, I got to kill this dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I said, I don't even know if she initially wanted to kill her dad, but I think
thing
once
led to
that
another.
had happened,
Yeah.
I feel like she thought she didn't have any
And
choice.
it may be that she was kind of planning on killing him, but she wasn't really going to do it.
She was just fantasizing.
She was kind of fantasizing about a certain plan. And maybe on that particular day, she got into an argument with her stepmom.
And then just thought, well, today's
I'm
the
going
day.
to kill that bitch. You know what I
because
mean?
maybe she
And
didn't
then-
even intend to kill them that day.
Right.
Because, like I said, if the druggist and the couple other people in the drugstore are to be
Right.
believed,
She was thinking
about poisoning them because she
Right.
did actually try it, unless she was buying it for some innocent purpose, which I don't really believe. But, you know, so she was probably like, oh, I'm just going to poison them and make it look like, because, like I said, everyone had had food poisoning, everyone had been sick, so she could have just attributed to that.
Her hatred for them was building up. She was fantasizing about it, thinking about it, and had all different kind of ideas about it. And on that particular day, that stepmom said something to her, and she was like, I'm going to kill this bitch.
Yeah, and she just went up there and
And
did
then
it.
she went up and got the axe, and then says, I'm going to do it now. And ran in on her and fucking got her. And then went, oh, shit. Damn.
Yeah.
This is the real deal. I killed her. And then Dad shows up. She talks her way into that, out of that a little bit. He goes to sleep up on top, and she's like, well, I guess I got to kill him.
Well, because it does seem like, I mean, this is a classic case of what police investigators would call overkill.
Yeah.
Because it seems like the first or second hatchet blow would have killed either one of the victims.
Right.
And the fact that she just kept going, that suggests to me that this was someone that hated them.
Yeah.
And they just, after she knew they were dead, she just kept on waiting.
Yeah. Well, she had been hating on him for fucking years.
Yeah.
And it was building up.
I feel like no one else hated them enough to do that to them.
Well, they
I'm
were
not saying it's impossible, because it does happen, but it's
she
like...
saw them as assholes. They were holding her back and, you know what I mean, treating her bad, and that's what I think.
Yeah.
She
Now-
couldn't be who she wanted to be.
Yeah.
They were in the way.
So, like I said, even though I kind of, like, you know, I lean toward the, you know, the theory that Lizzie did it, because I don't really see how anyone was... Like I said, there have been, like, a lot of other theories. Not all of them, like, exonerating Lizzie entirely. Some of them say that her sister Emma did it, and that there was, like, this... The whole thing of her going to Fairhaven to visit relatives, that was just like a cover story, and that she came back and did it, and then she went back, and then they knew that Lizzie wouldn't get convicted because she was a woman and blah-de-blah, so they had planned it together, which, you know, that's maybe possible because Emma had the same grievances, I guess, that Lizzie had. Some people, like I said, have suspected that Lizzie and Bridget were having an affair. And that Abby found out about it and was going to narc on her. And so it's like, you know, that whole thing happened, and then like Bridget covered up for her. There's also been another theory circulating that there was another previously undisclosed player in this whole situation who was apparently the illegitimate son of Andrew Borden, whose name was William Borden, who was apparently... They call him retarded. I don't know if he was like retarded or like, I don't really know. But some people have said that he had an illegitimate son, and he was the one that did it because he was getting written out of the will, and that then...
Well, it sounds very unlikely.
Like, yeah, and that like Lizzie and Emma were like, well, we can't let, you know, him come to light because then we won't get the money and like all this other... So they knew about it, but that seems like a stretch.
That's bullshit there.
I'm not even sure that dude exists.
Yeah,
I have to say.
He would have been documented at the scene. He would have been in there all the time. And, you know what I mean? The witnesses would have been talking about him. That's something somebody made up.
That's what I mean. I think that was kind of like a later extrapolation. Because, like I said, I'm not even entirely sure.
Lizzie did this shit.
The stories go that, like, oh, William, like, committed suicide a few years later. Like, oh, he was guilty about it and stuff. But it's like I said, I'm not really entirely sure that dude even existed.
Lizzie did that shit.
I kind of am leaning toward... Because... Yes, there are a lot of inconsistencies, like where did the bloody dress go? It's like, how did she kill somebody in like such a short time and like be calm and like she wasn't covered in blood and stuff like that. But
the investigators of the time weren't up to the task to answer those questions. You gotta understand that. It was easy back in those days to get rid of a dress or a murder weapon. You know
and like I said, I feel like they wouldn't have
retinol. They didn't have a fucking good investigative technique. They just didn't.
Luminol, not
Luminol. Yeah, I'm fucking drunk, you know. They didn't have luminol.
Well, like I said, I don't think it would have... I don't think they would have gone through a lady's personal things.
No.
And some people have pointed out that it's like, if she had one dress on over another dress, they're like, probably the police would not have thought to been like, hey, take off that dress that you have on, like, to check for a dress underneath. So it might have been that her dress was covered in blood, but she put another one on over it, and they didn't think to, like, look underneath. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which that could have been too. And like I said, it does seem weird to me that if she had done it and if the dress was covered in blood, which it probably would have been, it's like she should have probably destroyed it before that, like when no one else was around. But maybe like maybe like we said, she was thinking, well, I should do it in front of other people so it won't look as suspicious.
Yeah.
Because it won't look like I'm hiding something.
Right.
So maybe that's what her thinking was. But at any rate, like I said, she was acquitted of the murders. So the murders are actually officially unsolved. And she did go on to have, I mean, she was ostracized, but she had a lot of money. She got into the theater later on. She spent a lot of time in, bigger cities, Boston, Washington, D.C. and stuff like that, because she said she liked going there because no one knew who she was, really. They didn't recognize her. So she could spend a lot of time there and not have people, like, ostracizing her. But I don't know if she had a very happy life after that. You know what I mean?
Probably happier than what she had before.
Although, yeah, I mean, she did have money. She had freedom.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
After a while, she was hanging out with that actress and,
right.
was hanging out in that scene. So maybe she was, much
Yeah,
happier.
I think it did get better.
And some people that knew her in later life, and actually it's weird because one of the documentaries I saw, which was, fairly old, but there was a woman on there who was old enough to have known Lizzie, like when Lizzie was an old woman. And she said that she didn't really believe that Lizzie could have done it because she seemed like a really nice person, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Because, like I said, a lot of serial killers, people say, oh, he seemed so nice. We never would have suspected.
That was another era back then.
And I do feel like I feel like she was smart enough to know that at the time, people would not have suspected a woman of her class and station to have done such a brutal crime. And I think she played that to her advantage.
Of course she did.
Like I said, I don't think she was dumb.
No.
Like I said, it's unusual. It's very unusual for a woman to kill people with an axe or a hatchet. Usually, like I said, they will use less ostentatious methods.
Right.
They usually use poison or firearms or something much easier, much
Yeah, but she knew that too.
But I do feel like probably she did it and then used her station in life
like I didn't do
to
that
make it look like, she was a big thing in the church and everything like that. So I think she used that to her advantage. So like I said, I don't think she was stupid.
She did that shit.
I kind of feel like she probably did too.
Yeah.
But, All right. So we have gone on way longer than I expected because of Tom and his drunken digression.
Man, William's going to put it on me. He's putting it on me. I'm listening to you and reacting to it. But no, it was a good show.
It was. I thought it was very good, even though it took us a while to get to the shit. But you know what I mean. So this was our episode 176 about the Lizzie Borden case. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this rambling discussion, as we always do. And remember, if you like the show, please like, share, subscribe with all your friends and family. Please share on all your social media and all of that whatnot. If you would like to financially support the show, it'd be much appreciated. You can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/13o'clockpodcast, or you can go to our blog, 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a button in the sidebar to a PayPal account if you would like to give a one-time donation. It would also be much appreciated. And this has been episode 176.
Damn.
I'm not that drunk.
176.
176. Isn't that crazy?
Jesus Christ.
I know. We've been going on a very long time.
Yeah.
We will see you next time. Bye.